One time back in the 1990s when I was in high school, I was left home alone. Me being home by myself was something that very rarely happened because I have a large family. Living in the house was my parents, my older brother and sister, me, and then my two younger sisters as well. So, with all those people, the chances were that somebody would be home pretty much all the time. Now, I don't remember where everyone had to go on this particular night, but it just so happened that everyone had places to go except for me. So, for a few hours that night, I would have the house to myself. I was not nervous at all because I wasn't a little kid. I was in high school, but it still felt really odd just because I was not used to it. I remember that the house felt very quiet. It was dark outside, and our neighborhood was pretty typical. A good amount of other houses on the street, but things were mostly pretty quiet. At one point, maybe an hour or two into being home by myself, I went downstairs from my room to go to the kitchen. This was on the main floor and towards the back of the house. There I was getting something to drink when I saw something out of the corner of my eye. Much of the lights in the house were off, so I could see out the back windows better. We had a door that led out to the back patio, and I saw someone outside approaching it. I could tell right away, though, that it was not my parents and none of my siblings. It looked like some random guy. He didn't seem to notice me because I was entering the kitchen from an angle that was not really in his line of vision. Plus, it was mostly dark in the house. It was like right when I came around the corner to enter the kitchen, I saw him. I stopped and froze where I was. The man continued to approach the back door. I was now in the kitchen and near this door that led down to the basement. I then looked back over at the door where the man was headed and realized that it was unlocked. This gave me a terrible feeling of panic. In that split second, I did what was kind of a reaction to that, and I quickly opened up the basement door, which I was very close to. It was already slightly opened, and I went inside and then shut the door behind me. Just when I did, I heard the back door to the house opening. I then quickly ran down the stairs. Our basement was finished, but there wasn't much down there. The stairs had carpet, which I'm glad for because it made my footsteps very quiet. I then went into kind of the main basement area where we had a couch and an old TV. We had some blankets on the floor next to the couch, and I literally hid under them. At first, when I got down there, I heard footsteps upstairs of the man walking. I could not tell where he was going, though. I just hoped that he wouldn't go down into the basement where I was. I wanted to call my parents or the police, but could not. I didn't have a cell phone back then, and we did not have a home phone in the basement, only upstairs. I hid under the blankets for the longest time, and I didn't hear or see anything as I was covered. After I'm not even sure how long, I finally got up the courage to get up. I emerged and did not hear anything. The man had definitely not come down to the basement. After listening and not hearing anything at all for a while, I carefully made my way back up the stairs. When I got up to the top, I slowly and quietly opened the door to the kitchen from the basement. I looked around and saw nothing. There was a phone in the kitchen, though, so I just needed to get it. After I got the phone, I then brought it back down to the basement. In that time, I still heard and saw nothing. I was hoping that the man had left. I called the police from the basement and told them that a man had entered our house, and I gave them the address. I didn't know if the guy was still there or not, but I knew that I should call to be safe. So, I waited down in the basement until the cops got there, and I figured that the man was probably long gone by now. When the police arrived, I went upstairs and let them into the house. Then the police searched the entire place. To my surprise, they found a man hiding upstairs in my bedroom of all places. I was shocked. My parents got home not long after, as well as some of my siblings. I don't remember a whole lot after that, but it was certainly a crazy experience. I do not know exactly why the man chose our house, or if there was a reason he went to my room. The back door had been left unlocked with so many of us living there, and coming and going, but after that, everyone always made sure to lock it. This is something that happened really not that long ago. I live alone by myself in my apartment, which is on the first floor of a standard, fairly new building. As I sat by myself in the living room one night, I got a text on my cell phone out of nowhere. The text read, "I'm watching you," in all capitals. It was from a number that I did not recognize, so I had no idea who it was. When I saw this, my first reaction and also hope was that it was a joke by one of my friends, but part of me also felt creeped out by it. I didn't know how they would have an unknown number if it was a friend, but I also did not know who would do something like this. But I mean, come on, it just had to be a prank. That's what I was telling myself. I texted back asking who it was that was texting me. Not too long after this, I got a response. They said, "The person that is watching you," once more in all caps. I guess I should have expected an answer like that. Now I had all my windows closed and covered in my apartment, so I found it impossible for somebody to actually be watching me. But now I was feeling paranoid. My place is small, just one bedroom, a bathroom, and then a pretty large space with a kitchen and living room in it. Still, I went around and checked all my closets and rooms and confirmed that I was alone. Then I checked out my peephole and opened my door to the hallway. The coast was clear. Finally, I went around and looked out my windows to the surroundings. My windows looked out to the parking lot, which had a good amount of cars in it, but I didn't see anybody out there at all. So it was hard to tell if anyone was watching me or not, but it sure didn't seem like it. I saw nothing obvious, but if somehow this person was in the parking lot or something like that, they couldn't see me. All they would see is my windows because I had shades over them. I felt safe in my place, but I was still really creeped out by this. I almost texted back again, but then I decided to just block the number. If this was a prank by one of my friends, I didn't find it funny, and by blocking them, it would probably get whoever was doing it to fess up. However, I did not receive any texts at all. For the rest of the night when I was up, nothing strange happened. I felt a little spooked and checked out the windows every so often, but everything seemed fine. So that night, I was about to go to sleep. I was in my bed, just doing some reading before falling asleep. Out of nowhere, I heard this knocking at my front door. It was not that loud, but it was constant. A repeated knocking sound that just kept going. I was too creeped out to get up and see who was there. I knew that my doors were locked, so I just hoped that the person would not try to break in or anything. I also instantly connected it to the text, and this whole situation now seemed 10 times scarier. I got out my phone ready to call the cops. The knocking went on for probably about a minute straight. Then it stopped. I was still too freaked out to move for a while. Finally, I got up and left my bedroom. I went to the peephole of my apartment and looked, but the person was gone. I stayed up for hours after that, too scared to sleep. I didn't get any more texts, and I didn't get any more knocks on the door either. I was finally able to fall asleep really late. The next day, things were fine. Since then, I haven't received any texts or strange knocks on the door. I still don't know who it was. I thought maybe it could have been a neighbor, but I obviously have no proof of that. I really have no clue. To come to my actual door and knock on it so late at night seems too far-fetched to be a prank. And if it was one of my friends, I would think that they would have said something about it by now. I still don't know who did that or why. My husband travels a lot for work, so I'm home by myself quite often in our house. This was a couple of years ago now, and he was away for several days. So one night I was in our bedroom FaceTiming him as he was in his hotel. We often FaceTime every night when we're away from each other. We talked for a while, and it was getting late, so we said goodnight to each other and then hung up. My husband said that he was going to sleep now, and I was already in bed, but not that tired yet. So I put on a show and laid in bed watching it. Roughly 30 minutes later, I heard something downstairs. It kind of sounded like someone had knocked on the door. I didn't hear it very clearly, though. I was upstairs, so it was pretty far away. I listened closer, wondering if I was just imagining it or if it was possibly something else. About 30 seconds later, I heard it again. It did sound like someone was knocking at the front door. Still, I didn't hear it very clearly. I got up from my bed and looked out of our bedroom window at first, but it did not have a view of the front door. And I saw nothing. So I went out of the room to another window upstairs, which would have a view of the front door area. When I got there, I looked out the window and I saw a man wearing a hooded jacket walking through our front yard. But he was moving away from the front door area and moving towards the garage. He soon went out of my sight. I didn't know who this guy was or what he was doing, but it seemed very suspicious. Why would he come to the door so late at night? And he didn't look like any of our neighbors, although I couldn't see his face. I just hoped that he would leave our property. So I went over and went downstairs and then looked through several windows, including the front door window. Everywhere I looked, though, I didn't see the man at all. I thought that there was a good chance he had left, and that's what I was hoping. Still, I made sure that every door was locked and every window was covered. I was still feeling creeped out, though, so I tried to call my husband, but he didn't answer because he was asleep. I turned on a light to the front door outside to try to make myself feel better. Maybe if the guy came back, he would see that a light was on and leave. My fear was that he would try to break in. So I went back upstairs at that point and got back in bed. This time I did not hear any more noises, and I soon was able to relax and eventually fall asleep. However, I was awoken in the night. The first thing I remember after waking up was hearing the sound of one of the neighbor's dogs barking. I think that's what woke me up, and usually we didn't have any problems with the neighbor's dogs at all. Sometimes they might bark a little here and there during the day, but I had never woken up in the night to them that I can recall before. I didn't know whose dog exactly it was because several of our neighbors have them. The dog was barking repeatedly and pretty loud. I was quickly wide awake. Out of curiosity and a little bit out of suspicion from earlier, I went downstairs. When I got there, I looked out of several windows, but everything seemed fine. I saw nothing. And shortly after I got down there, the dog stopped barking. So at that point, I went back upstairs and once more fell asleep. The next morning I woke up, and things seemed fine. It was now bright and sunny outside, and I walked outside. However, when I got to the back patio area, I saw something that left me speechless. By the back door, there were a bunch of marks on the wall right next to it, and some on the door as well. It looked as though someone had been trying to pry the door open. The marks had certainly not been there before. I was shocked, and I took pictures and sent them to my husband. He told me to call the police. I realized it was possibly from the man I had seen the previous night. I then also realized that the dog barking was probably from the man in our backyard. A neighbor's dog must have seen him and started barking, and that's probably what scared the man off. Had that not happened, he may have broken into our house. The police came out and I told them everything. My husband told me that I should stay at my parents' house until he got back, and I did that because I was too creeped out to stay in our house by myself. The man did not return, though. When my husband returned, we ended up getting a camera set up. But nothing suspicious has happened like that since then. I'm grateful to the neighbor's dog for possibly saving me, or saving our house from being robbed. This is something that happened back when I was in college. During my freshman year, I lived alone in a dorm room, which was in an all-girls building. It was a pretty standard place where I just had my bed, a desk, a dresser in the room, and then a few things that I had brought. I also had a small couch and a mini fridge. But there was no bathroom in my room, so there was a community bathroom down the hallway that everybody would share. It wasn't too bad though, because the bathroom had about 8 small individual rooms in it. So one night, I stayed up really late doing homework. I was probably up until around midnight, working on assignments and studying. This is not something that I did every single night, but sometimes you have to. So after finally getting done with homework, I went to use the bathroom before going to bed. I left my dorm room, took a right down the hallway, and then made a left to the bathroom, which were ways down. I never bothered to lock my door when I would use the bathroom because I would just be gone for a few minutes. Plus, nobody was out in the hallways or anything. There really wasn't a need to. There were locks from the outside to the building anyways. When I went to the bathroom, nobody else was in there, and things were completely silent. I was in there for a few minutes brushing my teeth, and then when I came back to my room, I went inside. All my lights were off except for a lamp in the corner at my desk, and the TV was playing at a low volume. I went to the desk, turned off the lamp, and then got into my bed. So I remember that I was facing the wall, and I closed my eyes, and within probably a minute, started to drift off to sleep. However, suddenly I heard the sound of my door opening. When I heard it, I shot up in bed, and then turned over to the door to see what was happening. I just barely saw what appeared to be a man leaving my dorm room. I didn't see his face at all, just part of the back of him. He shut the door behind him and was gone. I was so confused, but I knew that a man was not supposed to be in here at all. I got up and quickly went over to the door and locked it. Then I decided to call campus safety and report it. An officer came to the building and looked around but found no one. So, whoever had been there was now gone. I was still very confused. After that, nothing else crazy like that happened in my time in college. But I still don't know what exactly happened that night. I figured that the man entered my dorm room when I was in the bathroom. There's no way I wouldn't have seen or heard him if he was in my room prior to that. There's also some places that he could have hid temporarily, and with pretty much all the lights off, I might not have seen him. I still can't believe that he was in my room at all, though. I'm glad that he left, and for a short time I thought that maybe he just had the wrong room. But why would he hide like that? I really don't know what was happening there. At the end of the day, I'm just glad that he left, and that nothing bad happened. Something really weird happened at my apartment a few months ago. So I live by myself. I have a one-bedroom apartment and I've been living here for a few years. For the most part, it's a pretty nice building. There's several levels and I'm on the second floor. I have many neighbors, but I don't really know any of them, and I don't see them too often. One night, I was at home by myself, and there was a knock at my front door very late. It was probably close to midnight. So right away, I knew that something was off. I wasn't expecting anyone. This rose my suspicions, and I went to the door to see who was there. When I looked through the small peephole in the door to the other side, I saw something strange. There was a man standing there wearing a suit and sunglasses. For whatever reason, I do not know why, I decided to answer the door. Even though it was creepy and late at night, I guess I just felt brave, or like the guy wouldn't do anything bad. I opened the door, and the guy just stood there a couple of steps away, looking at me. But when I opened it, I also noticed that there were 4 other guys all wearing suits and sunglasses. It was the weirdest thing. They were standing farther back a slight ways down the hallway. I asked if I could help them, and I'm sure that I seemed very confused because I was. The man in front of me seemed to look at me, as did the others, but nobody said anything. I looked at everyone else, and they were all just staring at me. I asked them who they were and what they were doing. They all just stared at me, but said nothing. Then, at once, just about every single one of them began to walk towards me. It started with the guys that were farther away, and then the guy right in front of me started to approach as well. I did the logical thing, which was to slam the door very quickly, and then lock it. When I did, they actually tried to open my door. I yelled that I was going to call the cops, and they stopped trying to open the door, but this did not scare them off. Now, all the men just stood in the hallway, staring at my door. I watched through the peephole. They're just looking at my door, standing next to each other. I was so creeped out. I didn't leave the door and just kept watching them. I was debating actually calling the cops. This went on for quite some time. Then, finally, after probably 2 or 3 minutes of like a standoff, they all just walked away. When they were gone, I looked down the hallway and confirmed it. After that, they did not come back. I'm still left wondering what that was all about. Was it just a group of guys trying to scare people to be funny or something? I'm really not sure, but it was the weirdest thing that's ever happened in my time living here. I'm hoping that I never see those guys again.
Welcome back, horror fans. Today we are breaking down a collection of terrifying, real-life encounters from a place you visit almost every week, but will never look at the same way again. Welcome to 5 true Walmart horror stories. Let's jump straight into the darkness. Our first story comes from a woman who worked a standard office job and loved to cook fresh meals every night. Right on her way home, there was a local Walmart where she regularly stopped for quick ingredients. One afternoon, a friendly bald employee with a dark beard in the produce section struck up a conversation with her. Over the next couple of weeks, this became a routine. He was always nice, but his questions gradually became unsettlingly personal, probing into where she worked and exactly where she lived. Things took a dark turn when he abruptly cornered her and asked for her number. When she politely declined, his entire body language shifted into pure offense, and he stormed off. Shaken, she finished her shopping and walked out to the far end of the parking lot, only to notice the man sitting in a car nearby. As she pulled out, his car trailed hers, mimicking every single turn all the way to her apartment complex. Realizing he was stalking her, she bravely drove in circles, waited for the perfect gap in heavy rush hour traffic, and pulled a dangerous merge to cut him off and escape. Fuming, she drove straight back to the Walmart customer service counter to report the stalker. When the managers called up the produce team, they delivered a chilling revelation. Nobody of that description had ever worked there. The man had simply bought a blue Walmart vest online to blend in and hunt for victims. The second encounter takes place late on a quiet weeknight in the fitness and toy aisles. A shopper was browsing near the back corner of the store when she overheard a strange man's voice talking to a little girl in the next aisle over. The man said, whispering, "I will buy you this toy if you come with me. Your mom said it's okay." Instantly sensing a kidnapping in progress, the shopper walked over to intervene. She found a man in a black jacket and a winter hat leading the child away by her hand. Acting fast, the shopper picked up a stuffed animal, stepped in front of them, and asked the man if it was a good gift for her niece. When she directly asked if the little girl was his daughter, the man panicked, claimed he was just watching her, and quickly hurried away. Moments later, a frantic mother's voice echoed through the store, calling out for her daughter, Sarah. The shopper sprinted to the mother, told her what happened, and together they raced to the front self-checkout lanes. They caught the predator right at the register, attempting to buy the toy to keep the child compliant. The mother screamed, exposing him to the crowd, and though the man sprinted out the doors into the night, the little girl was saved and police located the criminal shortly after. Our third story goes back to the days of the 24-hour Walmarts around 2014. A retail worker got off an exhausting shift at 3 in the morning and stopped by an empty store to grab a late-night snack. Standing completely alone in the quiet grocery section, he suddenly got the overwhelming sensation of being watched. Looking down to the far end of the aisle, he saw a tall, skinny guy in a black Adidas sweatshirt staring dead at him, completely frozen. Hoping it was just an odd coincidence, the shopper moved to the next aisle, but within 10 seconds, the expressionless face crept around the corner again. Everywhere the shopper walked, from the back corner to the main walkways, the silent figure trailed his exact footsteps. Unnerved, the shopper grabbed a bag of trail mix and rushed to the only open cashier, alerting her about the stalker. The creepy man faded into the clothing racks across from the registers, and the shopper quickly checked out, scanning the area to make sure the coast was clear. He made it out to his car in the empty parking lot, but right as he cranked the engine, he looked up in frozen terror. The skinny man was sprinting at full speed from the store entrance, charging straight for his driver's side door like a demonic predator. The shopper slammed the car into drive and peeled out of the space just seconds before the attacker could reach the door, watching the man continue to chase his car all the way to the street. The fourth story highlights how dangerous a predator's persistence can be. A young woman was shopping at nighttime when a gray-haired man introduced himself out of nowhere. Feeling extremely creeped out, she cut the conversation short and walked away to the self-checkout area. To her horror, the man followed her across the entire length of the store, stood right next to her register, and aggressively insisted on paying for her items. When she firmly told him no, he left the store empty-handed. But when she walked outside, he was waiting by the exit doors, awkwardly inviting her straight to his house. She walked away fast, got to her car, and successfully drove home. Believing it was just a one-time encounter, she continued using the same store. A month later, she was grocery shopping at 8 in the evening when she locked eyes with the exact same gray-haired creep. Terrified, she immediately abandoned her cart, crossed to the far opposite end of the quiet department, and tried to hide behind the aisles. But as she peeked through the shelves, she saw the man slowly tracking her down, closing the distance from afar. Realizing she would be cornered at the registers, she dropped everything, bolted out the exit doors, and sped home, completely abandoning that location for good. Our final story comes from a former overnight stalker who worked the 11 p.m. closing shifts. He was working completely alone in the pet supply aisle at 11:30, listening to music on his headphones, when he saw a shadow dart past out of the corner of his eye. Moments later, a stranger appeared at the end of the aisle, ducking away the second the employee looked up. The stalker took out his headphones and radioed his manager that an unauthorized intruder was hiding in the building after hours. An hour later, the employee walked into the massive, dark backroom warehouse to move stock, completely isolated from the rest of the crew. Suddenly, he spotted the intruder crouching behind a cardboard box underneath a heavy industrial shelf. Trying not to cause a panic, the employee turned around to walk away quietly, but he instantly heard heavy footsteps rushing up from 30 feet behind him. The stalker bolted into a full sprint toward the sales floor doors, hearing the attacker chasing him down until he burst through the exit. He grabbed another overnight worker, and together they armed themselves and went back to search the warehouse. Just as they opened the backroom doors, they heard the heavy slam of the emergency exit. They rushed to the scene just in time to see the shadow escaping out into the pitch-black night. The intruder had successfully evaded security, hiding in the dark corners for hours just waiting to hunt the employees. These chilling encounters prove that crime can strike in the most mundane, brightly lit places when you least expect it. If these true stories sent a shiver down your spine, make sure to hit that like button, subscribe to the channel for more dark storytelling commentaries, and always remember to watch your surroundings. Stay safe out there, and see you in the next video. Imagine living in a city where the dating market is so brutal, it feels like a literal post-apocalyptic wasteland. That was Katie Watson's reality in London. At 29, she's sharp, successful in PR, but completely exhausted by the endless cycle of terrible dates and superficial city life. But then, a statistical anomaly changes everything. What if I told you there's a place where women are so heavily outnumbered that the local dating market completely flips? Welcome to Farish, a remote village in the Scottish Highlands where the male-to-female ratio is a staggering 16-to-1. Today we are breaking down Jenny Colgan's hit novel, Where Have All the Boys Gone? This isn't just a basic romance summary. This is a story about corporate greed, a secret ancient forest, an accidental national media frenzy, and a woman trapped between two completely opposite men in a town crawling with testosterone. Let's get into it. Before the Highlands, there was the London drama. Katie shares a tiny flat with her best friend Louise. Louise is completely heartbroken because her long-term boyfriend Max just ran off with Katie's flighty, free-spirited younger sister Clara. The awkwardness is real, the vibes are tragic, and London life is suffocating. So, when a short-term PR consultancy gig opens up for the Forestry Commission in the middle of nowhere, Scotland, Katie packs her bags. Louise, desperate to escape the ghosts of her past relationship, hitches a ride. Their arrival is a disaster. It's freezing, it's raining, their tiny car gets stuck in a flood, and they are greeted by Mrs. McCloudy, the most terrifying anti-hospitality boarding house owner you could ever imagine. No central heating, thin blankets, and a strict rule. Only one slice of toast for breakfast. Welcome to paradise, girls. The next evening, Katie and Louise stumble into the local pub, the Mermaid, looking for a break. And this is where the culture shock hits. They step inside, and the entire room falls dead silent. Why? Because the pub is packed to the brim with men. Farmers, rugged fishermen, elite tech geeks from the local research institute, rugged tree surgeons. And literally not a single other woman is in sight. Louise looks at Katie and asks, "Is this my surprise party, or is this heaven?" For Louise, this is a total reset. Suddenly, these city girls are the center of a massive universe of attention. But while Louise starts enjoying the unaccustomed flattery, Katie has to actually go to work. And her boss? Well, he's a whole different kind of problem. Enter Harry Barr. He is the head of the Forestry Commission. He's brooding, intensely serious, completely uncombed, and has a massive wall up. He and Katie clash instantly. Harry treats her like a superficial city girl who only cares about lip gloss, while Katie thinks Harry is a sanctimonious dictator. But Harry is carrying a massive burden. He pulls Katie into the deep, ancient forest of Gaelcolia, a place running wild with natural roots, hidden waterfalls, and 400-year-old trees. He reveals a devastating secret. A massive corporate developer called Pluto Enterprises is trying to completely bulldoze this ancient ecosystem to build a giant luxury golf course. Harry wants to fight them quietly behind closed doors. Katie, using her PR brain, tells him he's crazy. Big business doesn't disappear if you ignore it. You have to fight loud. Meanwhile, Katie meets Ian Ken Ross, the charming, witty journalist who runs the local newspaper. Ian represents everything Harry isn't. He's smooth, handsome, and takes Katie out to a spectacularly romantic, exclusive seafood restaurant on the cliffs. The chemistry is undeniable, and after a few drinks, they end up back at his place. But here's the twist. The intimate night turns into an incredibly awkward, disappointing blip. Instead of handling it like an adult, Ian goes completely radio silent the next day, leaving Katie feeling rejected, insecure, and deeply humiliated. Frustrated with Ian and stressed about the forest, Katie's professional life completely implodes at the local agricultural fair. Trapped in a media production trailer, Katie starts ranting out loud about her messy personal life, corporate greed, and explicitly calls her boss, Harry, a clueless idiot. The nightmare? The trailer's PA system was fully switched on. Her entire rant is broadcasted live over the loudspeakers to every single person at the fair. Harry is furious. Katie thinks she's fired, her assignment is ruined, and she leaves for London in absolute shame. But a funny thing happens when a crisis goes public. The entire town rallies behind the cause. Ian publishes a massive front-page feature using Katie's talking points. The story catches fire nationally. Katie is invited onto major Scottish radio stations, and eventually she and Harry are booked on the biggest tea time TV show in the UK, Richard and Judy. During the live TV broadcast, Katie explains that the town is already facing a massive crisis because there are no women, and the last thing they need is hundreds of male corporate golfers taking over. The TV show goes viral, but not just for the environmental message. Single women across the country hear about this mystical village with a 16-to-1 male ratio, and they descend upon Farish like a literal flood. Tour buses, bachelorette parties, and single women fill the streets. The local tech geeks are grinning from ear to ear, the local pub is overwhelmed, and the quiet village turns into a chaotic festival. Katie is sent back to Farish to manage the chaos and organize a massive fundraising Midsummer Night's Ball at a local manor house to fund the legal battle against the developers. As Katie digs deeper into the corporate files to prepare for the ball, she uncovers the ultimate bombshell. The ruthless corporate developer trying to destroy the forest is actually Ian's father. Even worse, the real reason Harry and Ian hate each other goes back to childhood. When they were 12, Harry's mother fell tragically ill. Ian's father forced Ian to stay away from Harry's family to protect their corporate image. Harry felt abandoned by his best friend during the worst moment of his life, and Ian was too intimidated by his father to ever fix it. This all builds up to the night of the grand midsummer ball. The ancient manor house is glowing with candles, packed with international media, celebrities, and locals. The highlight of the night is a charity slave auction where the local men are auctioned off for dates to raise funds. During the auction, Ian's father marches into the ballroom with a group of wealthy corporate investors prepared to shut the event down. But something incredible happens. Harry steps up to the microphone, delivering an intensely passionate speech about preserving the wild, untamed spirit of the Highlands. Inspired by the moment, Ian stands up beside Harry, finally defying his father. Facing a massive national PR disaster and a united town, the investors panic, and Ian's father is forced to officially pull out of the deal. The forest is saved, but as the crowd cheers, Katie looks at the two men. Ian tries to apologize for his behavior, but Katie realizes something profound. Ian is charming, but he's weak. He didn't call because he was insecure. On the other hand, Harry, the man who drove her crazy, the man who seemed so grumpy, was the one who actually stood by her, worked with her, and fought for the things that mattered. Before she can say anything, her phone rings. Her sister Clara has gone into labor early in London. Using a private plane lent by a celebrity guest at the ball, Katie and Louise rush back to the city. Back in London, the baby is safely born. Louise decides she's completely done with city life and announces she's moving back to Scotland permanently to be with Craig, the local vet. Katie is left walking across Waterloo Bridge alone at sunrise, still wearing her red satin ball gown from the night before. She looks at the smoggy, noisy city and feels a profound sense of loss. She assumes her time in the Highlands was just a beautiful, chaotic dream. She thinks she backed the wrong horse and lost her chance at real love. Suddenly, a car screeches to a halt behind her. Harry Barr steps out. He has driven 12 hours straight through the night from Scotland to London just to find her. He steps up to her on the bridge, completely dropping his guard, and admits he was a jealous, stubborn idiot. He tells her that his life was completely empty without her disrupting it, and begs her to come back with him to the Highlands. Katie runs into his arms, realizing that she doesn't care about city lights or corporate ladders anymore. Because home isn't a place on a map, it's wherever the person you love is. They get into the car and head back north, leaving the big smoke behind for the clean sky of the mountains. And that is the chaotic, beautiful story of Where Have All the Boys Gone? If you love this cinematic book breakdown, make sure to smash that like button, subscribe to the channel for more storytelling summaries, and let me know in the comments below. Would you survive a 16-to-1 dating market? See you in the next video.
Usually when we talk about a morning commute, there's like a kind of universal low-level drudgery we all picture.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Just that collective sigh.
Right. But let's really put ourselves in a very specific modern kind of misery for a second.
Okay, I'm ready. Paint the picture.
So imagine it's barely past 7 a.m.
The absolute worst time.
Exactly. And you are squeezed onto the Docklands Light Railway, which, if you aren't familiar with London Transit, is this driverless, frantic little commuter train.
Shuttling thousands of people into the financial district every single day.
Yeah. And you have to literally angle your elbows out just to claim, like, a tiny pocket of standing room.
Just try not to be pressed directly against a stranger's damp raincoat.
Yes, the damp raincoat. And the carriage is thick with this overwhelming cocktail of overpriced espresso, stale breath, and just
Stress. Just pure, palpable stress.
right, this collective sense that every single person in there has been ripped from their beds entirely too soon.
Yeah, the great hungry machine of the city is just swallowing you whole.
And you're letting it, because, well, that's just what you do.
Yeah, it is an environment that actively demands you shrink yourself down.
Like, physically and mentally.
Exactly. Psychologically speaking, a crowded commuter train is a fascinating space.
How so?
Well, because it combines intense sensory overload with complete emotional isolation.
Oh, that makes so much sense.
Right. You put your head down, you put your headphones on, and you enter this state of defensive numbness.
Just to endure the sheer proximity of so many other stressed human beings.
Exactly. You are surrounded by humanity, but you've never felt more alone.
Wow. Okay, now hold on to that mental image for a second, that feeling of cramped, sweaty, urban claustrophobia,
Got it.
and completely shatter it.
Oh, gladly.
Because we are going to transport ourselves to a place roughly 700 miles due north.
A bit of a change of scenery.
A massive change. You are standing on a pristine, windswept Scottish island.
Okay, I'm breathing easier already.
The sky above you is this soaring, blinding white. And the air, and this is the detail that really anchors the scene for me, the air tastes intensely of salt and lemon ice.
Oh, what a description. Salt and lemon ice.
Right. You can actually hear fishermen calling out to each other over the roar of the deep blue sea.
It's just so expansive.
It really is. We're talking about two wildly contrasting environments here.
Two completely different rhythms of human existence, really.
Exactly. And it begs the question, if you were torn between the two, which world would you actually belong in?
It's a really compelling dichotomy because very rarely in life are we forced to choose between two absolute extremes like that.
Yeah, we usually just kind of end up where we end up.
Right, we just drift into the lives we lead. They're shaped by convenience or inertia or just economic necessity.
Just paying the rent, right.
Exactly. But when a person is violently pulled from one reality and dropped directly into the other,
it creates friction.
Incredible psychological friction. You can't rely on your old coping mechanisms anymore.
And that specific jarring friction is exactly what we are unpacking today on this deep dive.
We're getting right into it.
We are. We're exploring the journey of a young woman caught right in the middle of that collision.
In Jenny Colgan's novel, The Cafe by the Sea.
Yes. And let me set expectations right at the top here, because this isn't just like a breezy story about baking scones by the beach.
No, not at all. It gets quite heavy.
It really does. We are following Flora McKenzie, who is this 26-year-old paralegal.
And she's forced to abandon her anonymous London existence, right?
Exactly. She has to return to her childhood home on the remote northern island of Muir.
Which she's been avoiding like the plague.
Very much so. And we're going to see how this forced geographical shift becomes a profound study in confronting grief.
And unearthing buried identity.
Yes, and figuring out how the traditions we try so hard to escape are sometimes the exact tools we need to rebuild our lives.
The narrative uses that classic trope of the homecoming, but it really deploys it to explore some very heavy psychological territory.
It's definitely more than just a sweet romance.
Oh, absolutely. Primarily, it's a masterclass in the mechanics of avoidance.
Avoidance. Yeah, that's the perfect word for it.
Because Flora hasn't just moved away from home, you know? She has actively constructed a life designed to prevent her from feeling anything at all.
Let's look at that baseline state, actually. Because to understand the transformation, we have to see the cocoon she's trapped in.
Right, the London cocoon.
Flora's living in London, but it is distinctly not the glamorous, cinematic version of London.
No Hugh Grant running around here.
Definitely not. She describes herself as paler than milk, slightly awkward. Her hair is this faded, almost colorless strawberry blonde.
She's kind of just fading into the background.
Totally. And she's stuck in this cramped, drafty Victorian apartment with a revolving cast of flatmates.
Where the dead skeletons of old bicycles just pile up in the hallway.
Yes, I loved that detail. It's a very transient, unrooted existence.
She's essentially floating. I mean, at 26, she is doing what she assumes is the correct sequence of adult steps.
Going through the motions.
Exactly. She goes to the sterile office. She endures terrible Tinder dates with men who mock her northern accent.
Oh, the Tinder dates are so painfully real.
Right. And she even briefly considers dyeing her hair blue just to provoke some kind of internal reaction.
Just to feel something.
Exactly. It's a highly recognizable state of modern paralysis. She isn't desperately clinically unhappy, but she is entirely numb.
She's operating on low power mode.
That's a great way to put it. Low power mode.
And the cherry on top of this numb existence is her massive, utterly pointless crush on her boss, Joel Binder.
Oh, Joel.
I mean, Joel is the absolute archetype of the high-powered, razor-sharp New York lawyer.
He's terrifying, honestly.
He really is. He's demanding, he's arrogant, he remembers absolutely nobody's name.
And he exclusively dates these Amazonian women who look like they stepped off a Milan runway.
Right, which just makes Flora feel even more invisible. There's even a moment where her colleague Kai refers to Joel as a nigger.
Right, a nigger.
Yeah, someone who deliberately withholds approval or offers backhanded compliments.
Just so you crave their rare moments of validation.
Exactly.
Which is so toxic.
It is, and it speaks volumes about Flora's internal landscape at this point.
Why she would be attracted to that.
Right. Why does someone with low self-esteem choose to fixate on a man who practically looks right through her?
Because it's safe?
Exactly. Because it's a safe crush. It's entirely impossible, which means it requires zero actual vulnerability from her.
Oh, wow. That is deep.
It perfectly mirrors her broader strategy in London. She is keeping her head down, avoiding genuine, risky emotional connection, and basically just hiding in plain sight. Hiding in plain sight, but eventually the universe forces her out into the open.
It always does.
It does. The catalyst for all of this is a massive new client for Joel's law firm.
Enter Colton Rogers.
Yes, Colton Rogers. He is an American tech billionaire who has purchased this ruined, sprawling estate on the northern tip of Muir called The Rock.
Of course he called it The Rock.
Right, and he's pouring money into restoring it, trying to build an exclusive luxury resort.
But he hits a massive, immovable roadblock.
A very windy roadblock. The local authorities, backed by the islanders, are threatening to build a massive wind farm right in his pristine $1 million sightline.
Which is just a brilliant conflict.
It is, and Colton, despite his vast billions, is completely flummoxed.
He cannot figure out how to leverage his money to get the locals on his side.
Because he thinks money fixes everything.
Exactly. His approach is entirely transactional. I mean, he imports his own labor from the mainland. He ignores the local pub.
A huge mistake on a Scottish island.
A fatal mistake. He treats the island as a private playground rather than a living community.
So he has zero social capital.
None whatsoever. But someone in human resources remembers that the law firm has a junior staffer who actually grew up on Muir.
Cue the absolute sheer panic for Flora.
Heck.
She gets summoned up to the top floor, which is Joel's corner office, an altitude she never normally reaches.
Right, the stratosphere of the firm.
And Colton essentially demands that she act as his local liaison.
And Joel just signs off on it immediately.
Without even asking her. He realizes that his billionaire client is obsessed with this idea of having a local insit to manipulate the wind farm situation.
So he doesn't ask her. He just tells her.
You are going back to Muir.
It's a brilliantly constructed, inciting incident because it completely traps her.
She has no way out.
Right. It takes the one place on Earth Flores has been desperately trying to avoid and turns it into a strict professional mandate.
She can't say no.
If she refuses, she jeopardizes the very career she built to escape that island in the first place.
It really makes you wonder about the lengths we go to outrun our own history.
Oh, definitely.
We physically relocate, we change our wardrobes, we build entirely new routines.
All to construct a barrier between ourselves and whatever painful thing we left behind.
But the trauma or the grief doesn't actually disappear, does it?
No, it never does.
It just sits there waiting for the barrier to crack.
Exactly. Avoidance is one of our most powerful, yet ultimately fragile defense mechanisms.
Because you can't run forever.
Right. We think distance equals resolution. But as Flora is about to discover, geographical distance does nothing to resolve emotional baggage.
So that barrier gets entirely dismantled. And the journey back isn't some simple, anonymous train ride where you can read a book and ignore the world.
It is a trek.
A serious trek. It is a flight to the absolute edge of the map. She has to take this tiny, vibrating 12-seater prop plane from Inverness.
Oh, those tiny planes are terrifying.
They really are. And it's filled with hardy bird watchers and oilmen heading out to the rigs.
Such a specific crowd.
They fly over this endless, turbulent expanse of gray sea and finally land at a little corrugated tin shed that passes for the island's airport.
The physical isolation of the place is just immediate.
Immediate and stark.
And that geographical isolation mirrors a profound emotional exposure.
How do you mean?
Well, Muir isn't a place where, Westminster politicians visit, or you can lose yourself in a crowd.
There is no crowd.
Exactly. It is deeply entrenched in its own rhythms, governed entirely by the harsh weather and the tides.
So you can't hide.
Right. By leaving the modern anonymous machinery of London, Flora is returning to an environment where anonymity is mathematically impossible.
Because everyone knows everyone.
And more importantly, everyone knows your history.
And that lack of anonymity hits her the second she steps off the bus.
The very second.
You would assume, given it's a homecoming after 3 years away, she might get a warm embrace from the village.
A welcome back banner.
Right. Instead, she gets these cautious, sideways glances. The local fishermen give her tight, reticent nods.
It's chilly.
Very chilly. And then the true trial by fire, she runs into Mrs. Kennedy.
Oh, Mrs. Kennedy. The ancient, eagle-eyed former dance teacher.
She's terrifying.
She really is. But this interaction is incredibly revealing about the sociology of small communities.
It's brutal. Flora is...
Her smart, tailored city clothes.
Yeah, and she's pulling her loud little corporate wheelie suitcase over the ancient cobblestones, which is just such a funny image.
So loud. Click-clack, click-clack.
Exactly. And Mrs. Kennedy just points her walking stick at her and essentially reduces this 26-year-old paralegal back to an awkward 14-year-old girl in seconds.
It takes no time at all.
Flora tries to defend herself, right, by casually dropping that she works at a Big Six firm in London.
Like, that's going to impress her.
Right. And Mrs. Kennedy just sniffs and delivers this devastatingly polite, well, very fancy and nice for some, I'm sure. It's such a burn.
It really is. And it highlights a total mismatch in social currency.
Social currency, okay.
Yeah, because in London, your job title, your firm, the neighborhood you rent in, that dictates your status.
It's how people measure you.
Right. It provides a shorthand for your worth. But in a place like Muir, that currency is completely useless.
So what matters there?
Your status there is dictated by your participation in the community and your reliability to your neighbors.
Ah, and she left.
Precisely. From the islanders' perspective, Flora abandoned her family during their darkest hour.
So they see her as selfish.
Exactly. Her fancy corporate job doesn't excuse her absence. To them, it only underscores her perceived selfishness.
She broke the rules.
She broke the social contract of the island, and a tailored blazer doesn't fix that.
Wow. And that dark hour that islanders are judging her for becomes glaringly obvious the moment she walks into her family's farmhouse.
The Mackenzie family farm.
Yes. Flora's mother, Annie, was the undeniable center of gravity here.
The absolute matriarch.
She passed away suddenly 3 years ago, and the men she left behind, Flora's stoic father and her 3 brothers, Innes, Finton, and Hamish, they are basically drowning in their own dysfunction.
It's a really bleak picture. The description of the farmhouse kitchen is a masterclass in environmental storytelling.
It's so visceral.
It's thick with dust. Spiders are literally frolicking in the corners. The sink is a precarious mountain of dirty, crusted plates.
And they are subsisting almost entirely on whatever processed sausages or tinned food the local shop has in stock.
Just bare minimum survival mode.
Flora drops her bag on this huge, ancient wooden kitchen table and just feels this wave of despair.
I mean, who wouldn't?
Right. And we learn that the bed where her mother spent her final days was actually moved into that very kitchen because it was the warmest room in the drafty house.
Which is such a poignant detail.
It really is. And now the room feels like a mausoleum. There's a dripping tap that no one has bothered to fix for years.
It's just frozen in time.
But my question is, why? I mean, I understand they are deeply sad, but why not just wash a plate? It seems like a basic survival to keep your living space functional.
Well, because we are looking at a physical manifestation of profound, unaddressed grief, not just simple laziness.
Okay, that makes sense.
In that family dynamic, the kitchen was Annie's absolute domain. It was where she ruled, where she nurtured them, where she provided warmth and order.
So by letting it go to ruin,
By letting it decay, by refusing to engage with the maintenance of that space, the men are unconsciously avoiding the reality of her absence.
I see. So if they were to clean it up and cook a proper meal, they'd be admitting she isn't coming back to do it.
Precisely. To clean the kitchen and establish a new routine would be a tacit acknowledgement that life has to continue without her.
And they just aren't ready for that.
No. That is a terrifying step for a family that doesn't know how to talk about their feelings. They are frozen in time.
Wow.
So while Flora has been avoiding her grief by fleeing to London and burying herself in legal paperwork.
Her brothers and father are avoiding theirs by letting the farm slowly, silently die around them.
Exactly. It's 2 different expressions of the exact same avoidance.
Okay, but I have to push back on Flora's reaction to this.
Oh, how so?
Because when she finally snaps, her behavior feels a bit regressive.
Regressive in what way?
Well, she unearths these industrial strength cleaners from under the sink. She scrubs the counters until they gleam. She starts violently throwing away all the expired food.
She goes on a tear.
She does. But from a modern lens, it feels a bit like the prodigal daughter returns from the city just to wash the dishes and save the helpless men.
I see what you mean.
Doesn't it feel like she's just immediately falling back into a very traditional gendered role of the female caretaker?
It's a very valid critique.
Right.
And on a purely surface level, it certainly looks that way.
Right.
But if we dig into the psychology of her actions, her initial cleaning spree isn't an act of submission to a gender role.
It's not.
No. It is a frantic, almost panicked attempt to establish control in an environment that is emotionally overwhelming her.
Oh, that's interesting.
She literally describes feeling like she's sinking into a panicky morass. She isn't cleaning to serve her brothers. She's scrubbing away her own mounting anxiety.
That is a very different motivation.
Exactly. She is using bleach and hot water to fight back against the suffocating memories of her mother's deathbed sitting in that room.
That makes a lot of sense. It's a survival mechanism.
It is.
She's trying to carve out a square foot of order in a house full of emotional chaos.
Exactly. And from a narrative perspective, what's brilliant is that this frantic, desperate need for control, this literal scrubbing of the dusty shelves, is a physical action that unearths the ultimate catalyst for her healing.
The Notebook.
Yes. If she hadn't been aggressively cleaning the old dresser, she wouldn't have accidentally knocked over a pile of pristine, unused celebrity cookbooks her brothers had bought and ignored.
Right, that frantic scrubbing leads to a literal breakthrough. The glossy Jamie Oliver and Angela Lawson books hit the floor, and tucked behind them, hidden away, is something entirely different.
The real treasure.
It is this dark, hard-covered notebook with a red binding that's starting to come loose.
And it smells right.
Yes. She specifically notes that it smells like a concentrated essence of the kitchen. Grease, flour, vanilla, and home.
Wow.
It is Annie's personal, handwritten recipe book.
Finding that notebook is the true turning point of the entire narrative.
It really changes everything.
Because it isn't just a book of instructions on how to bake. It is a physical artifact of her mother's love, her mother's voice, and her mother's history.
The details in the book are so vivid and tactile, too.
Yeah, Colgan describes it so beautifully.
There are literal grease spots from years of frantic cooking marking the most used pages.
Which is such a universal thing for family cookbooks.
It is. There's a faded, romantic little note from her dad scribbled on the first page, dated back to 1978. There are Annie's highly specific, distinct annotations, like deeply circling the words, hot oven cold butter for the scone recipe.
Which is great advice, by the way.
Right. And further back, there's even her grandmother's beautiful, spidery Gaelic handwriting giving instructions for traditional oxtail soup.
It is a multi-generational text of survival and care.
And Flora intuitively understands how to use this text.
She really does.
She uses it to do what none of the Mackenzie men have been able to do for 3 years: communicate.
Because this is a family that is entirely emotionally constipated.
Totally constipated.
They cannot talk about their feelings. They cannot say the name Annie without the room freezing.
They can only bicker about broken tractors and falling milk prices.
Exactly. So, realizing words won't work, Flora shifts tactics. She starts speaking to them through food.
Which leads to one of the most resonant, emotional scenes in the story.
Oh, the baking scene.
Yes. Flora decides to bake her mother's scones. But she doesn't do it alone in a silent kitchen. She recruits her 3-year-old niece, Agat.
Little Agat.
Agat is this fierce, wild little girl with stark white blonde hair, looking exactly like a miniature version of Annie.
A little Silky herself.
Exactly. And they make this massive, joyful, flour-covered mess with the cold butter and the dough.
But the real emotional payload is what they put on the scone.
The preserves in the larder.
Yes.
The jam.
Flora goes into the dark pantry and finds the very last jars of Annie's homemade jam. Cloudberry, raspberry, damson.
It is the literal last physical remnant of her mother's touch.
Preserved in sugar and sealed in glass.
And Flora makes a conscious decision here. Right. Rather than hoarding it like a museum piece.
Rather than keeping it frozen in time like the rest of the house, she decides they are going to eat it.
Because food, fundamentally, is meant to be consumed to sustain life, not venerated on a shelf.
Exactly. And the moment of truth comes when her brother Innes, who is arguably the most hardened and stressed of the men, comes in from the freezing fields.
He takes a scone.
He does.
Yeah.
But before he takes a bite, he stops. He breathes in the scent of the baking and the specific fruit of the jam, and he briefly closes his eyes.
Oh, man.
In that sensory flash, he is instantly transported back to the days when his mother ruled that house.
It is a moment of profound, silent communion.
The food bridges an emotional chasm that language simply couldn't cross.
It immediately makes me think of the concept of Christian memory.
Oh, absolutely. The Madeline moment.
Exactly. How a specific taste or smell bypasses the logical brain and hits the emotional core directly. It's like that climactic scene in the movie Ratatouille, but grounded in this freezing Scottish farmhouse.
That is the perfect comparison.
And it turns out, Flora isn't the only Mackenzie using food to process emotions or find a way forward.
No, she is not.
There is a massive, surprising twist regarding her grumpy, cynical brother, Fenton.
Vin's a great character because he initially seems like the most useless member of the family.
He really does. He's constantly disappearing, he avoids the heavy lifting with the sheep, and Innes is always yelling at him for slacking off.
But Flora tracks him down one day.
Right to the old, freezing stone dairy shed, and she discovers he isn't slacking off at all.
Not even a little bit.
He is secretly, obsessively crafting an exquisite, world-class artisanal cheese.
Down in the dark.
Yeah, he's been down there experimenting with cultures and aging processes for years. Flora tries a tiny sliver of it, and it's this sharp, creamy, unbelievably complex flavor.
But Fenton is terrified to tell their father, or Innes.
Why? Because they're traditionalists.
Exactly. He thinks they'll just laugh at him for playing around with fancy cheese while the farm is dying.
And here is where we need to connect the emotional journey to the stark economic reality of the setting.
Because it's not just about tasty cheese.
No, Finton's cheese and Flora's baking aren't just quaint, cozy hobbies to pass the time.
They represent a fundamental mechanism for economic and cultural survival.
We really have to look at the macroeconomics of modern agriculture here.
Let's do it.
The Mackenzie farm is failing because the global commodity price of raw milk has plummeted.
It's a volume game they can't win.
Right. Supermarket conglomerates squeeze the margins, and transporting cattle or raw milk from a remote Scottish island to the mainland is prohibitively expensive.
The shipping costs alone would ruin them.
So the traditional volume-based way of life on Muir is literally financially unsustainable.
So they're working themselves to the bone just to lose money every single month.
Exactly. It's heartbreaking.
It is. But the only way small remote farms can survive in the modern global economy, and by extension, the only way the island community itself can survive without everyone moving to the mainland.
Right, because the youth are leaving.
Exactly. The only way is by elevating their traditional heritage into something new, scarce, and valuable.
They cannot compete on raw milk prices with mega farms.
But a bespoke, small batch, artisanal island cheese.
Oh, that has massive market value.
Huge. And this is where Flora's London experience actually becomes her superpower.
Ah, because she knows the market.
Yes. Fitton just sees his cheese as a weird hobby. But Flora understands the modern urban foodie scene.
She knows that people in London will line up at Borough Market and pay a massive premium for an authentic, story-driven, artisanal product.
She sees the economic potential in Fitton's secret passion because she understands the outside world's appetite for authenticity.
She realizes that the innovation they desperately need to save the farm isn't some new piece of heavy machinery or a different breed of cow.
No, the innovation is hiding right there in their own dairy shed.
It's a really powerful realization about leveraging what you already have rather than constantly looking outward for salvation.
It really is.
It makes you think about how many inherited passions or strange little family talents are sitting in a dusty box or a garage right now.
Completely undervalued because we don't know how to contextualize them in the modern world.
Exactly. But just as Flora is finding her footing, baking the scones, discovering the cheese, tentatively rebuilding a relationship with her family,
The bubble bursts.
her two worlds violently collide. The London reality she tried to leave behind literally lands on the island.
Yes, Joel Binder arrives.
Oh boy.
And the setup for this is a masterclass in comedic and cultural contrast.
It's amazing you have Joel, the slick, sharp-suited, perpetually wired New York lawyer whose entire life is dictated by Outlook calendars and instant gratification.
Stepping off a tiny, rattling prop plane right into the biting, horizontal northern wind.
Just a total shock to the system.
Completely. He is a man who expects seamless service, constant high-speed connectivity, and immediate deference to his status.
None of which Mira offers.
Absolutely none of those things. The friction is immediate.
The best moment happens right there at the tiny airport. Flora drives the farm's battered, mud-splattered Land Rover to pick him up.
And Joel, acting on pure corporate muscle memory, strides over to get in the passenger side.
Completely forgetting that in the UK, the right side is a driver's seat.
Right. So they do this awkward shuffling dance.
And then Joel, this absolute master of the corporate universe, looks down and realizes the Land Rover has a manual transmission.
The ultimate defeat.
He can't drive a stick shift. He is completely mechanically neutered in this environment.
He has to hand the keys back, and Flora has to take the wheel.
That scene is so much more than just a funny misunderstanding, too.
Oh, it instantly mechanically subverts their entire power dynamic.
In the glass and steel towers of London, Joel is untouchable.
He navigates multi-million-dollar corporate acquisitions in his sleep. Flora is just a name on an email chain to him.
But on a rutted dirt road in Scotland, faced with a clutch pedal and a gearbox.
His corporate skill set is totally useless. He's entirely dependent on his junior paralegal just to move from point A to point B.
And it's not just the car that defeats him. Joel is staying at the Harper's Rest, the local hotel.
Which is managed by Inga Britt.
Oh, Inga Britt. She is this incredibly forward, totally lackadaisical Icelandic woman who seems to wander the halls permanently clad only in a slip.
Poor Joel is completely out of his depth.
He's trying to order room service coffee at 5 a.m., which doesn't exist. He's stalking the tiny, silent village looking for an open convenience store.
But the thing that truly breaks his composure is the daylight.
The daylight. Tell me about the daylight.
The daylight is a crucial psychological element in this section of the book. It's early summer in the far north, which means they're experiencing almost continuous daylight.
Like the midnight sun.
Exactly. The sun dips below the horizon for maybe an hour, leaving this constant, eerie white glow.
And Joel is exhausted.
He complains bitterly to Flora, asking her how anyone can stand it.
Wait, so why does the light bother him so deeply? Beyond the obvious physiological issue of needing a dark room to produce melatonin and sleep, it seems to trigger a real anxiety in him.
It does, because the constant daylight literally strips away Joel's ability to hide. Think about how a high-powered, highly stressed individual operates in a city like London or New York.
They live in the dark.
They rely heavily on routine and environment to manage their stress. They rely on late nights, dark bars, the anonymity of a crowded subway, and the physical shadows of the city to decompress.
And maintain their tough, cynical exterior.
Exactly. They control their environment completely. But on Muir, the sheer scale of the natural world and that persistent, unblinking northern light force him to be intensely present.
He cannot retreat into the shadows.
It acts almost like an interrogator spotlight. And because he is forced to see his surroundings clearly without the camouflage of city life, he is finally forced to actually see Flora.
That is such a perceptive read, because in London, she was practically invisible to him. Just another pale face in a gray cubicle.
But here, with her hair blowing in the wind, confidently navigating this rugged terrain, she suddenly makes complete sense to him.
But before we can dig into their evolving relationship, we really have to talk about the elephant in the room.
The reason Joel is there in the first place.
Colton Rogers. Because Colton's presence represents the dark side of this collision of worlds.
Colton serves as a fascinating sociological foil to the island community.
So?
Well, he possesses vast, almost incomprehensible wealth, and he has used it to create a stunning, but ultimately sterile, Disney-fied version of a Scottish estate at the Rock.
He sandblasted the ancient stone, planted immaculate, unnatural topiaries,
and brought in a fleet of shiny Range Rovers. It's beautiful, but it's completely detached from the reality of the landscape.
And he genuinely cannot understand why the locals despise him.
Right, he thinks, I'm throwing money around, I'm restoring a ruin, why won't they let me stop this wind farm?
And it's Flora who finally finds her voice and explains the mechanics of community to a billionaire.
Which is such a great moment.
She sits him down and says, essentially, you don't shop in the village store. You import your own builders instead of hiring locally. You don't drink in the pub.
You treat this island as a picturesque backdrop for your life, not as a living, breathing community.
It's a very sharp critique of gentrification.
And the responsibilities of wealth. Colton operates under the assumption that his capital automatically buys him a seat at the table.
But Flora has to educate him.
Yes, she tells him that in a place like Muir, integration requires participation. You have to endure the bad weather with everyone else. You have to engage in the local microeconomy.
You have to break bread with your neighbors.
Exactly. You cannot buy social capital. You have to earn it through shared experience.
Which leads directly to Flora's masterstroke.
The cafe.
Yes, to win over the locals for Colton's project, and to prove to the islanders that Colton is actually willing to invest in their future, Flora pitches a wildly ambitious idea.
She wants Colton to fund a pop-up cafe in an abandoned bright pink chemist shop right down by the harbor.
It's a brilliant synthesis of all her disparate skills.
It really is. She is taking her mother's heritage recipes, Fenton's world-class artisanal cheese, her own legal and organizational skills honed in London, and Colton's venture capital.
And combining them to create something that serves everyone's interests simultaneously.
But it's not just a cafe.
Right, and that's my colon. How exactly does opening a small cafe solve a multi-million-dollar dispute over a wind farm? It seems like a huge leap.
It does seem like a leap, but it solves it mechanically by creating a third space.
A third space.
Yes. Colton's problem is that he is viewed as a hostile invader. The wind farm is a threat to his view, but his approach to fighting it has been entirely antagonistic to the locals who might benefit from the wind farm's revenue.
So they dig their heels in.
Right. Flora sets up the cafe to serve as a literal and metaphorical neutral ground.
Ah, I see.
By funding it, Colton demonstrates tangible economic investment in the village's daily life, not just his own private estate.
It creates jobs, it draws tourists to the harbor.
And it forces Colton to interact with the islanders on their turf. It aligns their economic interests and humanizes him.
Which is the only way they will ever agree to negotiate with him regarding the wind farm.
Exactly.
Yeah.
It's proof of concept.
That makes perfect sense. And the process of building it becomes this incredible, chaotic village mobilization.
Everyone gets involved.
It revitalizes not just Flora, but the entire community. She creates jobs for local teenagers, like these two girls, Iona and Isa.
Who previously thought their only option was to leave for the mainland to find any kind of work.
She recruits Mrs. Laird, the vicar's housekeeper, who is famous across the island for her bread.
It's a massive pooling of the island's latent resources.
And notice how the nomenclature of the project changes as the community takes ownership of it.
That's a great detail.
Initially, Flora pitches it as the Summer Seaside Kitchen, which sounds very much like a trendy, transient London pop-up.
Very corporate.
Right. But as the locals get involved, as Mrs. Laird points out that they are using Annie Mackenzie's recipes, the name naturally, organically transitions.
They eventually just start calling it Annie's.
It cements her mother's legacy in the physical geography of the town. She is no longer just a ghost in a dusty farmhouse. Her name is above the door on the harbor.
It's beautiful.
It feels like Flora's whole life in London, she was a junior litigator just filing the paperwork for other people's lives.
Just pushing paper.
But in the kitchen at Annie's, she is the lead litigator. She is synthesizing raw evidence, the cheese, the bread, the local teens, the billionaire's money, into a winning case for the island's survival.
That is a fantastic analogy. She has moved from passive observation to active, strategic leadership.
And as she steps into this power, we see a massive, undeniable shift in her dynamic with Joel.
Oh, the shift is staggering.
Think back to that DLR train we talked about at the beginning. She was a nervous, invisible subordinate, blushing if he even glanced at her desk.
And now?
Now, she is a competent, radiant leader. She is commanding a bustling commercial kitchen, negotiating with suppliers, directing staff, and holding the genuine respect of the islanders.
She is vibrant, decisive, and fully alive.
And Joel is forced to step entirely into her world.
He is no longer the master of the boardroom.
No, he is the guy sitting awkwardly at a corner table while his junior paralegal runs a highly complex, fast-paced operation.
He sees her competence, her deep connection to her roots, and her sudden, undeniable confidence.
The artificial power imbalance that defined their relationship in the city is completely leveled by the reality of the island.
And it's not just her managerial competence that captivates him. He sees her deeply integrated into her natural environment.
Which brings us to the mythology of the story.
Yes, specifically the Selkie myth and the concept of embracing identity.
Colgan weaves this beautiful thread of Scottish folklore throughout the book.
The myth of the Selkie is fundamental to understanding Flora's journey.
For those listening who might not be familiar with Celtic folklore, Selkies are mythological beings who live their lives as seals in the ocean.
However, they possess the magical ability to shed their seal skins when they come on land, transforming into beautiful humans.
But there's a tragedy to the myth, right?
Always. The tragedy is that they always fundamentally long for the sea. If a human steals and hides their skin, the Selkie is trapped on land, married to the human, but they are never truly whole or happy.
They're always looking at the horizon.
Always. And on Muir, there were always these quiet whispers that Flora's mother, Annie, with her stark white hair and slightly otherworldly demeanor, was a Selkie.
And the islanders murmur the exact same thing about Flora.
It completely recontextualizes her entire physical appearance.
Right. Because in London, Flora's pale skin and white blonde hair made her look washed out, odd, almost sickly under those harsh fluorescent office lights.
But on Muir, placed against the dramatic backdrop of the white sands, the churning gray seas, and the sweeping clouds, her coloring makes perfect evolutionary sense.
Joel explicitly realizes this when he watches her.
He does. He sees that what looked colorless and faded in the unnatural environment of the city is actually incredibly striking and entirely in its element here.
She isn't washed out. She is a creature built for the north.
There are two incredibly visceral physical scenes that prove this deep, almost supernatural connection to the island landscape.
Let's talk about the dog first.
The dog, yes. Flora's old, severely overweight dog, Bramble, gets his paw trapped in some rocks near a roaring waterfall during a sudden violent rainstorm.
It's a really dangerous situation. Flora is wearing completely inappropriate London canvas shoes, but she doesn't hesitate.
Not for a second.
She scrambles up the slick, treacherous rocks to save him. She is drenched, freezing, and furious at the situation, but she absolutely refuses to abandon the animal or be beaten by the landscape.
She eventually gets help from a character named Charlie.
Right, who runs a local Outward Bound program, which is essentially a wilderness survival and resilience training program for youth, but the moment establishes her physical grit.
And then the second scene is even more intense and magical.
The whale.
During another massive storm, a whale becomes disoriented and strands itself in the shallow, freezing waters of the bay.
The entire village mobilizes in the rain to try and turn this massive creature around before the tide goes out completely.
And Flora, wearing a borrowed, oversized boiler suit from the pub, wades straight into the freezing, churning ocean.
It's a moment of pure instinct. She ignores the biting cold and the very real physical danger of being crushed.
She gets right up there, nose to nose with this massive, terrified, thrashing creature.
And what does she do? She sings to it.
She sings the same rhythmic island songs she's been humming while kneading dough in the cafe.
She stays waist deep in the freezing water, offering comfort to this wild animal until the local lifeboat manages to attach a line and tow it back out to the deep water.
And right before it slips away, she leans forward and kisses the whale on the nose.
And Joel is standing on the dock watching all of this unfold.
Just completely stunned.
He is watching this woman who he previously only knew as a timid, quiet paper pusher who fetched coffee, communing joyously and fearlessly with a wild leviathan in the middle of a freezing Scottish storm.
It completely rewires his understanding of who she is.
If we look at this through a psychological lens, it's a perfect example of biophilia.
Biophilia.
Yeah, the innate human instinct to connect with nature and other living beings. In modern society, we often suppress this instinct, leading to a kind of low-grade chronic burnout.
Oh, that's fascinating. And Joel is definitely suffering from that urban burnout.
Exactly. Watching Flora engage in this raw, tactile connection with nature acts as a visceral shock to his system.
It also perfectly pays off the Selkie metaphor.
How so?
The seal skin represents our true, authentic, unvarnished selves. Flora tried to hide hers. She tried to shed her island skin and pack it away in the suitcase to feed into the corporate anonymous machinery of London.
But without it, she was slowly suffocating.
Muir is the place where she can put her skin back on. It's where she can finally breathe deeply.
So where does that leave the romance? Because they do finally collide.
They do. After the whale rescue and after the cafe becomes this undeniable roaring success, Joel and Flora end up together.
But they don't come together as a demanding boss and a submissive subordinate.
No, they meet as two equals who have completely stripped away their urban armor.
Joel has a profound moment of clarity. He deeply wants to be with her, but he realizes he cannot ask her to return to a miserable life in London.
He has seen her true skin. He knows with absolute certainty that if he drags her back to a cramped apartment and a cubicle, she will wither and fade, exactly like a trapped Selkie.
He loves her enough to acknowledge that she belongs to the island.
Which is romantic. But let's be real, he's still a hyper-ambitious, high-powered New York lawyer.
Right. He's not going to suddenly buy a pair of overalls and start farming sheep. That would be completely out of character.
Exactly, and that is why the narrative resolution of The Cafe by the Sea is so much more satisfying than a standard romance novel.
It doesn't rely on a fairy tale ending where one person completely sacrifices their core identity and ambition for the other.
Joel doesn't force her back to the city, but he also doesn't completely abandon his own hard-won career.
Because Colton Rogers is establishing a major resort base on the island, Joel realizes he has a professional reason to be there.
He decides to commute.
He will split his time between New York, London, and Muir. They find a modern, highly pragmatic compromise.
It's an integration of their two worlds, rather than an obliteration of one.
Flora gets to stay by the sea, running Annie's, acting as the economic engine for her family, and honoring her mother's legacy.
And Joel gets to keep the high-stakes legal career he thrives on, while finally finding a quiet, grounded sanctuary away from his own internal demons.
It's a beautiful balance. Let's pull all of these threads together because the arc here is massive.
It really is a huge transformation.
We started with Flora as an invisible, exhausted commuter, dreading the DLR train, completely disconnected from her family, and trying to outrun the deep, lingering grief of losing her mother.
And we end with her transformed into a vibrant, essential community leader and business owner.
She has saved her family's farm, not by changing what they do, but by recognizing the modern value in Fenton's traditional cheese.
She has processed her grief by bringing her mother's grease-stained recipes back into the light.
She has united a fractured community by forcing a billionaire to engage with them on a human level.
And she has found a partner who respects her, not for the quiet corporate mask she wore, but for the fierce, capable, weather-beaten islander she truly is.
I think the takeaway here for anyone listening is incredibly potent.
Very much so.
We are so often sold this linear narrative of success that moving forward inherently means abandoning where we came from.
We're told that growth requires reinvention, that you have to leave the small town behind for the big city, and that you have to shed the traditional to become modern.
But the Cafe by the Sea argues the exact opposite.
It illustrates that sometimes the key to unlocking our future is hidden inside the very traditions, the familial quirks, and the geographic roots we tried so hard to escape.
The past doesn't have to be an anchor dragging you backward. If you engage with it honestly, it can be the solid foundation you build your future upon.
You don't actually have to choose between modern ambition and traditional belonging. With enough effort, creativity, and compromise, you can build a life that honors both.
It makes you think about the concept of the true skin from the Selkie myth.
It really does.
The idea that we all have an authentic, perhaps wilder self that we carefully fold up and hide away just to survive the demands of the modern world.
To fit onto that crowded commuter train, to survive the sterile office politics, to pay the rent.
It's a survival mechanism, but it comes at a cost.
A high cost.
If you were forced tomorrow to strip away your job title, your daily commute, and your polished city persona, what does your true skin actually look like?
That's the real question.
And more importantly, where is the physical place in the world that makes you want to put it back on?
Maybe it's a bustling kitchen.
Maybe it's a quiet island at the edge of the world. Or maybe it's just anywhere that the air tastes a little bit like salt and lemon ice.
That sounds perfect.
Until next time, keep diving deep. I want you to picture a dying high street. Like the sky is this relentless, punishing gray, the air is freezing, and the only stores left open are, charity shops, maybe a place renting out mobility scooters, and a boarded-up pub.
Oh, wow. Yeah, a pretty bleak picture.
Right. There's this palpable sense of just total abandonment. But then, blink and transport yourself to a completely different world. Historic Edinburgh.
Oh, gorgeous.
Yeah, exactly. We are talking cobblestone streets that look wet even when it hasn't rained, towering Gothic architecture casting these long, dramatic shadows, and tucked away in all of this, a dusty, failing, completely chaotic bookshop.
And standing right in the middle of this mess is a protagonist who feels like her entire life is unraveling at warp speed.
But we nailed it. Welcome to a special festive deep dive.
It is a profound contrast to start with, isn't it?
Yeah.
I mean, you brought us the transcript of the audiobook, The Christmas Bookshop by Jenny Colgan.
I did, yeah.
And you asked us to find the core insights hiding inside what appears on the surface to be a very cozy retail story.
Right, because it's so easy to look at the cover of a story like this and assume it's just a lighthearted romp about, dusting off some old books and finding holiday cheer.
Oh, absolutely. But today, our mission is to extract exactly how this tale about a failing independent shop is actually a masterclass in dissecting family dynamics.
Yes.
And the toxic illusion of the perfectly curated life and really the undeniable messy magic of a physical community space.
Exactly. The deeper we got into the source material you provided, the more we realized it's exploring some incredibly heavy universal themes.
It really is.
And I want to ground this right away with something I think you, listening right now, can probably relate to. You know how going home for the holidays often turns you right back into a stroppy teenager?
Oh, universally recognized psychological regression. It happens to everyone.
It fundamentally does not matter if you are 30 years old, paying your own mortgage, managing a huge team at work. You walk through your childhood front door, your mom makes one comment on your shoes, and suddenly, bam!
You're slamming doors, rolling your eyes, and acting like you're 15 again.
Exactly. And that emotional regression is the exact starting line for our main character, Carmen Hogan.
So she's what, nearly 30 years old?
Yeah, she is nearly 30, and she has just lost her job at this shabby, fading department store called Downstons in a dying Scottish industrial town.
I want to linger on the economic reality of Downstons for a moment, actually, because the source text paints a very specific and, frankly, heartbreaking picture here.
It really does. It's not just a commercial entity closing its stores.
No, it is the death of a community hub. I mean, the author spends time describing how Downstons was the anchor of this town. Generations of local brides made their gift lists in that store.
Right. Mothers bought their baby's first prams there. Kids lined up in the winter for Santa and the grotto.
It was a place where life milestones were marked. And now,
Yeah.
It has been systematically killed off by out-of-town retail parks that offer massive free parking lots.
And of course, the unstoppable rise of online convenience shopping, which is the brutal reality of modern consumerism.
It is. We mourn the loss of these community spaces. But Carmen herself admits she is entirely guilty of contributing to the problem.
Oh, totally. She talks about buying cheap mugs on Amazon instead of trekking into town to support the local shops.
Exactly. She is participating in the very economic shift that renders her unemployed.
So the shop closes down, she has no income, no prospects, and where does she end up? Sleeping under her old, faded Spice Girls duvet in her childhood bedroom.
Eating her mother's food and marinating in a profound sense of failure.
Yes. And this brings us right to the ultimate source of her insecurity, her older sister, Sophia.
Oh, Sophia. If we're looking at the dynamic of the golden child and the cautionary tale, these two are the quintessential textbook example.
They really are. They represent two entirely divergent paths.
Right, because Sophia is a highly successful, aggressively driven lawyer operating in Edinburgh. She's currently pregnant with her fourth child.
And she is married to this handsome, equally successful international lawyer named Federico.
And they reside in a flawless, multi-story Georgian townhouse in the affluent Newtown district.
Honestly, reading the descriptions of these two sisters is like looking at two completely different social media feeds.
Oh, I love that analogy.
Like, Sophia is that perfectly curated, beige aesthetic influencer account. You know, the exact type. Everything in her house is symmetrical.
No plastic anywhere.
None. The kids are only allowed to play with expensive, ethically sourced wooden toys that probably cost more than Carmen's monthly grocery budget.
She is the embodiment of the hashtag blessed and hashtag boymum culture.
Exactly. And Carmen, on the other hand, is the messy, unedited reality. She is the photo you untag yourself from.
Oh, brutal but true.
Right. Her bag explodes on the floor because she hasn't cleaned it out in 6 months. Her wash bag is filthy, and she thinks nothing of feeding her nieces and nephews plain crisps right before dinner just to keep them quiet.
The resentment between them is palpable right from the first few chapters.
Yeah.
And it's not just a superficial annoyance, you know.
No, it goes deep.
With every passing year, Sophia's gifts to the family become increasingly lavish. She buys expensive, unpronounceable European delicacies for their parents.
Which just makes it painfully, glaringly obvious who is succeeding in the adult world and who is, like you said, still hiding under a Spice Girls duvet.
Right. Sophia's success is a mirror that constantly reflects Carmen's perceived inadequacies. It's a suffocating dynamic.
So their mother, who clearly just wants Carmen out of her house, let's be honest, orchestrates a deal.
She does. Sophia has this eccentric client who is on the verge of losing his bookshop.
And Carmen desperately needs a job and a place to live, so the mom forces this merger. Carmen has to relocate to Edinburgh to work at this shop.
And to do so, she moves into the damp basement of Sophia's pristine home.
And I mean literally the basement. It's the old servant quarters.
Yes, it's dark, it smells a bit musty, and it is physically situated beneath the flawless life her sister has built.
The architectural symbolism there is impossible to ignore. Carmen is literally placed in the subterranean, hidden foundation of Sophia's perfect life.
But as we start to peel back the layers of this sibling dynamic, it becomes incredibly rich and complex. I mean, Sophia projects this image of absolute effortless perfection to the outside world.
Right.
But the text slowly reveals that she is secretly exhausted to her core. She is heavily, almost dangerously reliant on her performative, yoga-loving nanny, Skylar.
Oh, Skylar.
Right. Just to maintain the illusion that she can have it all. Carmen, meanwhile, projects this tough armor of apathy and sarcasm.
But underneath that prickly exterior, she is deeply, fundamentally insecure about the fact that she lacks a university degree or what society would deem a proper career.
Exactly.
Okay, wait, I have to jump in and push back on this reading of Sophia, though.
Okay, let's hear it.
You're painting her as this exhausted victim of her own perfectionism. But was Sophia actually trying to help her little sister out of some sense of familial duty, or was she just being incredibly manipulative?
Manipulative, how so?
Because reading between the lines of the source text, it really felt to me like Sophia was just looking for free live-in babysitting and a convenient way to get their mother to stop nagging her on the phone.
That's a cynical take, but I see where you're coming from.
Think about her initial reaction. When the mom first suggests bringing Carmen to Edinburgh, Sophia's immediate visceral response is, "You are not going to dump the brat on me."
Yeah, she does say that.
That doesn't sound like a sister eager to offer a helping hand. It sounds like someone managing a nuisance.
I hear your skepticism, I do. But I think writing Sophia off as purely manipulative ignores the immense psychological burden she carries as the eldest, high-achieving daughter.
Okay.
You have to consider the ecosystem she is trying to preserve.
Mm-hmm.
Sophia is operating at the absolute limit of her capacity.
Right. High stakes, legal career, husband who travels.
3 children with a 4th on the way, and a societal expectation to make it all look effortless. When she resists taking Carmen in, it's not necessarily out of malice, it's a panic response.
So you think she's just drowning?
She is a woman barely keeping her head above water, and her mother is tossing her an anchor.
Wow. Okay.
Yes, bringing Carmen to Edinburgh solves a problem for her eccentric client. Yes, it gets their mother off her back. And yes, she probably hopes Carmen can wrangle the kids occasionally.
But she is also operating under the assumption that Carmen is incapable of handling real responsibility.
Exactly.
But that's exactly my point. She doesn't view Carmen as an equal. She views her as a problem to be managed.
Well,
she literally dumps her in a failing, financially ruined business just to keep her occupied during the day. She physically places her in the servants' quarters.
I mean, she had the space.
But she doesn't sit down and say, let's figure out a career path for you. She says, go sit in this dusty shop so mom thinks I fixed you.
And that is a fair critique of Sophia's emotional intelligence in that moment, because she physically and emotionally lacks the bandwidth to treat Carmen as an adult equal.
Because Sophia's entire life is about control.
And Carmen represents chaos. Putting Carmen in the basement and sending her to a chaotic bookshop is Sophia's way of compartmentalizing that chaos.
She is trying to contain the mess so it doesn't infect her meticulously ordered life.
Exactly. But what Sophia doesn't realize, and what forms the emotional core of the narrative, is how deeply she underestimates Carmen's resilience and her latent capabilities.
Which is such a satisfying arc to watch unfold. So Carmen is carrying all of this incredibly tense, unresolved family baggage directly into her new workplace.
Right.
She has something to prove, even if she won't admit it to herself. And let me tell you, this new workplace turns out to be just as much of a disaster zone as her internal emotional state.
Oh, this transition takes us directly into the seemingly impossible task of saving Mr. McCready's shop.
It's an impossible task.
The setting here is crucial. The shop is located on Victoria Street in Edinburgh. The text describes it beautifully as this curving, multi-leveled street with a unique balcony arrangement.
It is the kind of street that tourists just flock to. It's wildly photogenic.
Right, all the other shops on the street are twinkling, thriving, and magical. There's a high-end French restaurant, a quirky magic shop, and expensive stores selling bespoke tweed to tourists.
It is a vibrant commercial ecosystem. And then sitting like a rotting tooth right in the middle of this beautiful street is Mr. McCready's store.
A rotting tooth. That's a good way to put it.
It was a 2-story, unmitigated fire hazard. We aren't talking about like charming, dusty, antique vibes. We're talking about borderline dereliction.
Yeah, it's bad.
The windows facing this busy, affluent street are full of literal dead flies. Old, fading maps are just stacked haphazardly against the glass, blocking out the light.
But the detail that really perfectly encapsulates the absolute insanity of this business is the filing system.
Oh my gosh, the filing system.
A customer comes into the shop looking for a very specific children's book. They know it's about a rabbit with wings.
Okay, so in a normal universe, how do you find this book? By author, by title, maybe by general children's fantasy section.
No. Mr. McCready files this book under subspecies.
Wait, subspecies? Are you kidding me?
It is a detail that is objectively hilarious, but when you analyze it, it defines every single foundational logic of retail commerce.
It really does.
A store's organizational system is supposed to facilitate a transaction. It's supposed to guide the consumer from desire to purchase with as little friction as possible.
Mr. McCready's system does the exact opposite. It creates an impenetrable labyrinth that only he holds the map to.
And crucially, we learn that he doesn't even have a card reader.
Wait, really? In a modern, highly touristed city?
He operates entirely in cash and personal checks. He is completely, willfully disconnected from the modern consumer experience.
Which perfectly introduces the man himself, Mr. McCready. He is this wonderfully eccentric, elderly owner.
He's described as portly with surprisingly tiny feet, right?
Yeah, and he walks around wearing multiple pairs of glasses shoved onto his head at once. Now here is the kicker. We learn that on paper, Mr. McCready is actually incredibly wealthy.
Right. He inherited a vast, sprawling Highland estate from his family.
But he is entirely cash poor. He has absolutely no liquid assets because he has spent decades completely ignoring his finances, the upkeep of his properties, and basically the realities of living in a capitalist society.
Because he fundamentally rejects the identity of a shopkeeper. That is not how he views himself or his relationship to the space.
What does he view himself as then?
He tells Carmen that he views himself as a custodian of books.
A custodian?
Right, a shopkeeper wants inventory to leave the store in exchange for money. A custodian wants to protect the inventory from the outside world.
That explains so much. He actively hides from potential buyers.
He really does.
Yeah.
He has constructed this cozy, hidden backroom sitting area, complete with a warm fireplace and an antique tea set, specifically so he can read in peace.
And avoid the nuisance of interacting with customers. He literally hopes the bell on the door doesn't ring. It's incredible.
But Carmen, standing in the middle of this commercial disaster, isn't left entirely without a compass.
No, she gets a surprise visit from what I can only describe as the ghost of retail past.
Oh, Mrs. Marsh.
Yes, Mrs. Marsh. Her terrifying, uncompromising former boss from the closed-down Downstons miraculously appears in Edinburgh.
Mrs. Marsh is one of the most fascinating minor characters in the text.
Yeah.
She is the embodiment of old-school, rigid retail discipline.
Decades of working on hard shop floors have altered her physical presence. The book says she has taught herself to glide silently down aisles to catch lazy employees or shoplifters.
And unlike Mr. McCready, who views books as sacred objects to be protected, Mrs. Marsh views customers as an absolute nuisance, but a necessary one.
To her, customers are chaotic elements that dirty the freshly mopped floors and ruin the carefully aligned displays.
Right.
My absolute favorite detail about Mrs. Marsh, and the one that adds such a layer of tragic depth to her rigidity, is that she invented a fake husband.
The fake husband, yes.
She wears a wedding ring and refers to a husband who simply does not exist. Why? Because decades ago, as a woman trying to demand authority and respect in the male-dominated world of retail management, she realized she wouldn't be taken seriously unless men thought she was spoken for.
It is simultaneously hilarious in its execution and deeply, profoundly sad in what it says about the world she had to navigate.
It really is. But she tracks Carmen down in this messy bookshop, takes one look at the dead flies and the chaos, and delivers her ultimate, unyielding retail mantra.
Clean, clear, curated.
She orders Carmen to stop wallowing and focus entirely, obsessively on the Christmas season.
Pounding it into her head that up to 40% of a retail store's annual profit happens in those crucial 8 weeks leading up to the holidays.
40%, that's huge.
Mrs. Marsh's intervention is the catalyst, but it also forces us to analyze the underlying psychology of Mr. McCready's hoarding.
Right, the mess in the shop isn't just laziness.
Exactly, it's an emotional fortress. As Carmen explores the building, she discovers a hidden staircase leading to a massive, palatial, completely untouched drawing room above the shop.
Oh wow, so it's perfectly preserved from Mr. McCready's childhood.
Yes. It is full of tarnished silver photograph frames and a beautiful, untuned grand piano gathering dust. We learn his father was a famous, robust Scottish Antarctic explorer.
A man of action and history.
So the shop below and the apartment above aren't a business or a home to Mr. McCready.
Yeah.
They constitute a living, breathing museum of his lonely childhood and his parents' glorious, intimidating past.
He is frozen in time. The chaos of the shop is a physical manifestation of his inability to move forward.
That's spot on.
So, hearing all this, it makes me want to ask you a question about how we romanticize these spaces.
Sure, go ahead.
How much of the so-called charm of independent, quirky bookstores is actually just terrible, self-destructive business management?
Oh, that's a brilliant question.
Because as a consumer, as a book lover, you walk into a dusty, chaotic shop with books stacked to the ceiling and you think, oh, it's so authentic, it has so much soul.
Right, you want to get lost in the stacks.
But the brutal tension the book exposes is that if you genuinely love books and want a space to exist, you actually need to sell those books to survive.
You cannot pay exorbitant Edinburgh commercial rent with quirky charm, eccentric filing systems, and windows full of dead flies.
You need cash.
And that tension is precisely the core conflict of this entire section of the narrative. The romance of the antiquarian aesthetic, the bohemian ideal of just being surrounded by literature, is actively, aggressively destroying the economic viability of the space.
It is a slow suicide by neglect.
Carmen's role is to bridge that massive gap, Armed with Mrs. Marsh's harsh, pragmatic advice, she realizes she has to completely transform the store's physical space.
She has to violate Mr. McCready's private sanctuary with the harsh realities of commercialism if she wants to save this old man from eviction, financial ruin, and ultimate heartbreak.
She has to turn his museum into a marketplace.
Which is a massive undertaking, and it leads us directly into her turnaround strategy.
Right.
Carmen decides to lean 100% into the Christmas season. If 40% of the profit happens now, she needs to capture every single penny of it. But she's one person in a massive, dirty shop. How does she start?
Well, she uses Sophia's children as free labor.
It is a brilliantly pragmatic, slightly underhanded move that shows her growing strategic thinking.
Oh, absolutely. She brings in Jack, Pippa, and the notoriously grumpy middle child, Phoebe.
And how does she motivate them? She bribes them with massive, sugar-filled milkshakes from a local cafe.
Which is a direct violation of their mother Sophia's hyper-strict, organic-only, health-conscious diet regimen.
Naturally. But it works. The kids get a sugar high, and they start dusting, sweeping, and hauling out years of accumulated garbage.
It's incredible to watch because it's the very first time in the story we see Carmen actually taking charge, delegating, and finding her own competence.
She isn't the failure under the Spice Girls duvet anymore. She's a manager.
And as they clear away the literal physical debris, they start unearthing the shop's true potential. They start finding antiquarian treasures hidden under piles of worthless paper.
This is when we are introduced to Ramsey.
Right. Yes, Ramsey. A towering, perpetually muddy sales rep who comes from a massive family and deals in rare texts. He brings in these stunning, highly valuable books to see if Mr. McCready will buy them.
The source text luxuriates in wonderful sensory details during these discovery scenes. It highlights the tactile nature of physical media.
It really does. Ramsey brings in a specific set of heavy, green-bound Hans Christian Andersen fairy tales.
The author describes the marbled end papers, the rich silk place-holding ribbon, and the vibrant, full-color illustration plates that are carefully protected by delicate, translucent tissue paper.
It emphasizes books not just as containers for text, but as beautiful, physical objects of art.
And looking at these beautiful objects triggers a vital realization for Carmen.
What's that?
She looks at these delicate tissue-covered plates and realizes a fundamental truth about retail demographics. These specific books are not for kids.
Oh, definitely not.
If you give a toddler a book with tissue paper inserts, they will immediately rip it to shreds, chew on the ribbon, and spill apple juice on the marbled cover.
Right. These books are for nostalgic adults.
Exactly. They are for people with high disposable income who want to buy a piece of their own idealized childhood to put on a shelf and admire.
So what does she do?
She doesn't bury them in a children's section. She puts them right at the front of the store under the best lighting, priced at a premium.
She begins to deeply understand the emotional resonance of the object. She isn't selling a fairy tale. She is selling nostalgia.
She is selling a feeling.
But she takes this psychological approach even further with her strategy for the window displays.
Oh, the windows.
Realizing that the shop needs to visually arrest people walking down the street, she ventures back up into Mr. McCready's massive, untouched attic and uncovers boxes of his pristine, antique childhood toys.
Oh, the descriptions of these window displays are pure magic. You can practically see them glowing in the cold Edinburgh twilight.
They really sound incredible.
In the left window, she sets up this elaborate, fully working vintage electric train set. It has little, meticulously painted fields, tiny trees dusted with fake snow, working miniature signal lights, and a heavy metal train that actually toots its whistle as it chugs through a papier-mâché tunnel.
Amazing.
And then, in the right window, she sets up an intricate dollhouse. But it's not just a standard dollhouse. It is a mouse house.
A mouse house.
Yes. It's populated by tiny, incredibly detailed toy mice wearing little tweed waistcoats and wire spectacles.
Oh, that's adorable.
She gets so invested in the details that she builds them a tiny tinfoil ice skating rink and makes microscopic ice skates out of bent paper clips. It's an obsessive level of detail.
If we step back and analyze this retail transformation from a commercial perspective, what Carmen has done is profoundly effective.
It's genius, really.
She shifts the shop from a passive defensive storage unit into an active magnetic experiential destination. She taps directly into the emotional resonance of the holidays.
People walking home from work, freezing in the Scottish winter, literally stop dead in their tracks just to stand outside the glass and watch the little train go round and round.
Exactly.
While reading this section, my mind immediately went to the modern strategies of experiential retail. Carmen essentially created a 19th century version of an Instagram pop-up experience.
Oh, that's a perfect comparison.
Think about it. Today, massive global brands spend millions of dollars creating immersive experiences, pop-up rooms filled with balloons, neon lights, and interactive displays, solely so people will walk in, feel a sense of wonder, take photos, and post them online.
Right.
Carmen executed the exact same psychological strategy using a dusty train set, some bent paper clips, and a string of cheap fairy lights from a pound store.
She gave people a compelling emotional reason to stop scrolling on their phones and physically cross the threshold of the shop.
It is, as you said earlier, a masterclass in visual merchandising and the psychology of foot traffic.
And as the shop begins to draw this crowd, it naturally attracts a colorful, eclectic cast of local characters. The author uses these characters brilliantly.
They aren't just background decoration, right?
Exactly. Each of them offers a completely different perspective on what the spirit of the season actually means. They serve as narrative foils, reflecting different paths Carmen could take in her own life.
Let's dive deep into these characters because they really elevate the story from a simple romance into something much more philosophical.
Sounds good.
First up, we have Oke. Oke is a Brazilian Quaker and a dendrologist, which is a scientist who specializes in the study of trees.
Right.
He first wanders into the shop looking for a very dense, highly specific academic textbook on tree soil composition.
Oke provides a stark, necessary philosophical contrast to the frantic commercial chaos of the holiday season that Carmen is trying to harness.
He does.
When they start talking, he tells Carmen a fact that completely throws her. He doesn't celebrate Christmas. In fact, he doesn't even celebrate his own birthday. As a Quaker, his philosophy is rooted in seeking a gentle grace every day.
A gentle grace. I love that.
He believes that relying on forced, culturally mandated seasonal spikes of joy like expecting one day in December to make up for a miserable year is emotionally unhealthy. He prefers a steady, quiet appreciation of daily existence.
He is just so incredibly calm and grounded, and as he and Carmen interact, they form this quiet, genuine, slowly building romantic connection.
Which is such a nice contrast for her.
He walks her to work through the freezing streets. He doesn't try to impress her with flashy dates, expensive dinners, or talk about his status. He's just present. He is authentically himself without any armor or pretense.
Which brings us to the character who serves as his absolute polar opposite in the narrative ecosystem. Blair Fenning.
Oh my word, Blair Fenning, the cynical self-help guru.
Yes.
Blair is a mega best-selling author who churns out books with aggressively cheerful titles like Live Your Happy Authentic Life for a Better, More Confident You. He comes to Mr. McCready's shop for a live morning TV segment and a heavily publicized book signing, all orchestrated by his incredibly stressed, aggressive publicist, Emily.
Blair is a fascinating study in modern celebrity culture. On the surface, he projects this blindingly positive, utterly impenetrable aura.
When the TV cameras roll in the bookshop, he stares directly into the lens and tells the viewers that everyone is good enough, that everyone is loved, and that happiness is a simple choice.
But the moment the cameras stop, the text reveals the dark underbelly of this persona. Behind the scenes, Blair is chronically exhausted, deeply cynical, and profoundly unhappy with his own existence.
Okay, we have to spend a minute talking about his teeth because it is the wildest, most telling detail in the book.
Oh, the teeth.
Blair admits that he literally filed his own natural teeth down to tiny, sensitive pegs so that he could fit perfect, blindingly white porcelain veneers over them.
It's so jarring.
All just to ensure he had a dazzling, telegenic smile for his morning show appearances. It is the most horrific, visceral, wince-inducing detail in the entire source material.
But it is such a profound, striking metaphor for his entire existence. He has permanently, physically mutilated his natural, authentic self.
Yeah, he ground down his own foundation.
And covered it up with a shiny, artificial, mass-produced facade solely for public consumption. He's sacrificed his actual body to serve an image.
And the tragedy is, he is completely self-aware about the grift.
He is. He freely admits to Carmen, in a moment of unguarded honesty, that his books are essentially useless.
They are just temporary dopamine hits for unhappy people.
He tells her that people buy his books, read the platitudes, feel good for a fleeting moment, and then inevitably sink right back into their quote-unquote shit normality. He is selling a cure he knows doesn't work.
It's so incredibly bleak, but it makes the thematic contrast of the novel so razor-sharp.
It really does.
Blair represents the ultimate toxic endpoint of the performative perfection that Carmen's sister Sophia and the nanny Skylar are obsessed with.
Right. It's the idea that if everything looks perfect on the outside, the perfect teeth, the perfect Georgian townhouse, the perfectly curated Instagram feed, then you win.
But underneath that veneer, it's exhausting, painful, and deeply hollow. Oko, on the other hand, represents the messy, honest, unvarnished reality.
A tree grows slowly, it has deep roots, it loses its leaves, it isn't always pretty, but it's real.
And this is the reality that Carmen is slowly learning to embrace for herself.
Before we move on from the local characters, we should also briefly mention Brona.
Oh, Brona, the enigmatic midwinter witch who runs the magic shop next door.
She operates entirely outside the Christian capitalist framework of the street. She celebrates Saturnalia, the ancient Roman festival.
Which provides a pagan counterpoint to the traditional Christmas frenzy, serving as a subtle reminder to the reader that these midwinter celebrations of light in the darkness long predate the commercial urgency of selling toys and books.
And she's just a great character.
She gives Carmen this little glass vial of a love potion, which adds just a tiny, wonderful touch of magical realism to the story.
It really does. But this massive, overarching theme of messy authenticity battling against performative perfection comes to a hilarious and honestly traumatic head when Carmen decides she needs to execute a flawless, high-end storytime event for the local Edinburgh moms.
Oh boy. This brings us to what we have to call the infamous Little Match Girl disaster.
It's a disaster.
Building on the shop's new momentum, Carmen wants to host a story time to bring in the lucrative daytime parent demographic.
Right. Sophia, eager to show off her supposedly rehabilitated sister, hypes the event up on her wealthy mother's exclusive WhatsApp group.
On the day of the event, the shop is absolutely packed with toddlers in expensive designer puffer jackets and mothers expecting a gentle, enriching, perfectly sanitized literary experience.
And Carmen, who's completely unprepared and hasn't actually pre-read the material, just grabs an old, beautifully bound copy of Hans Christian Andersen's fairy tales off the shelf and starts reading out loud.
And all the stories she chooses, Little Match Girl.
Now, if you haven't read the original Victorian text recently, it is brutal.
She gets to the part where the impoverished little girl is out in the freezing snow, barefoot, striking matches just to stay warm while hallucinating visions of a happy family.
And then Carmen reads the ending. She reads the part where the little girl literally freezes to death in a corner on New Year's Eve.
Oh, the horror. The reaction in the room is visceral and immediate. These modern mothers who spend their lives meticulously curating their children's environments to protect them from any physical or emotional discomfort are absolutely horrified.
The text captures this perfectly when one of the older toddlers explicitly asks, "Where's the girl gone?" and then slowly realizes the protagonist is dead.
The shop instantly descends into an uncontrollable storm of sobbing infants and panicked mothers.
Carmen realizes she has messed up monumentally and tries to backpedal, right?
Oh, she frantically flips the pages to find a happier story. She lands on the Snow Queen.
Which is not better.
No. The very first line she reads aloud is about a demonic mirror shattering and tiny shards of evil glass flying into people's eyeballs, freezing their hearts.
It is a total cascading disaster.
The pristine mothers grab their children and practically flee the shop as if it's on fire, deeply traumatized.
It's a fantastic scene of comedic chaos. But what's truly fascinating here from a character development standpoint is the reaction of Sophia's middle child, Phoebe.
Right.
While every other child in the room is crying in terror, Phoebe is utterly fascinated. She doesn't cry. She leans in.
She connects with the darkness, the high stakes, and the unvarnished authenticity of the tragic story.
Phoebe is the grumpy, overlooked rebel of Sophia's family. She constantly pushes against her mother's beige, perfect aesthetic.
And through this shared disaster, she and Carmen form this really special, unspoken bond. Carmen doesn't talk down to her or try to sanitize the world for her.
Later in the book, there's this incredibly tender, weird little moment where Phoebe sneaks a piece of warm cheese in her pocket, all the way to the bookshop.
Specifically because she wants to feed the tiny mechanical mice in Carmen's window display. She wants to care for the vulnerable things in the cold. It's beautiful.
That moment marks a significant turning point in the broader family dynamics.
Yeah.
The facade of perfection is finally beginning to crack.
Through her interactions with the kids, Carmen realizes that Sophia's life is a house of cards.
Right. She discovers that Sophia doesn't even decorate her own home for Christmas. She actually rents a fully decorated tree and garlands from a luxury service because she's too utterly exhausted from working and performing to do it herself.
Wow. And furthermore, Skylar, the supposedly enlightened, perfect nanny, is revealed to be incredibly self-absorbed and negligent.
Yes. During another story time, when Blair Fenning forces Carmen to read his terrible, cynical children's book about a mindful bear, Skylar completely ignores her charges.
Instead, she spends the entire time filming herself with Blair for her own social media clout, leaving the kids to fend for themselves.
So when you look at all these pieces, I think it asks a really profound question about how we grow. Is failure sometimes a far better teacher of empathy than constant, unbroken success?
That's a deep question.
Sophia's rigid, high-pressure, failure is not an option style of parenting is suffocating her children, especially Phoebe.
But Carmen's chaotic, unpolished, failure-prone nature makes her deeply empathetic. She is exactly what her nieces and nephews needed.
She becomes the perfect confidant for the struggling middle child, precisely because she knows exactly what it feels like to be a disappointment, to not fit into the perfect, curated mold.
That is a brilliant synthesis. Carmen offers these children a rare, safe space where they don't have to perform for an audience. They can just be messy kids.
And as these family dynamics finally begin thawing and healing, and as the shop's popularity absolutely soars thanks to the window displays and the viral infamy of the story times, all the narrative threads converge on the final desperate push before Christmas Day.
Which brings us to the grand climax of the story, the ultimate fate of the shop and the incredible solstice party.
On the financial front, Carmen's turnaround strategy is a massive success.
Right. The unique combination of selling Ramsey's high-margin rare books to collectors, the foot traffic generated by the magical window displays, and the huge, unexpected influx of cash from the Blair Fenning television event creates a perfect storm of revenue.
The text confirms that they make enough money to ensure that Mr. McCready can pay off his immediate debts, satisfy the landlord, and guarantee the bank won't seize the property.
The physical space is saved.
And to celebrate this victory, Carmen organizes a massive block party right there in the shop on the winter solstice.
And this is where the magic really peaks, because it brings together all these disparate, quirky characters we've met along the way. You have Ramsey, the muddy book dealer, Brona the witch, the local traffic wardens who normally terrorize the street.
And even the book club moms, who are seemingly forgiven Carmen for the trauma of the fairy tales and are now planning to drink copious amounts of mulled wine.
It acts as the ultimate antithesis to the isolation of the digital age that we discussed at the beginning. It is a true, tangible community gathering.
The most poignant moment of the party is when Mr. McCready, who has spent decades hiding in his back room, steps entirely out of his lonely isolation. He stands up in front of the crowd and gives a deeply heartfelt speech. He thanks his neighbors for their support, and specifically, he publicly thanks Carmen for breathing life back into his sanctuary, acknowledging that change, while terrifying, was necessary for survival.
There's also this wonderful, slightly mysterious moment during the party where a group of German tourists wandering over from the Edinburgh Christmas market give Mr. McCready a beautifully carved wooden star and a vintage toy car.
Right. Without giving too much away, it strongly hints at a connection to his family's past, perhaps tied to his father's travels, giving him a piece of his history that he can finally embrace with joy rather than sorrow.
And of course, woven into this community triumph is the romantic resolution.
Naturally. There is a brief, classic romantic misunderstanding where Carmen mistakenly believes OK has abandoned her and flown back to Brazil without saying goodbye.
But in true romantic fashion, he surprises her. He hasn't left. In fact, he joins Carmen and her entire overwhelmingly loud family for Christmas dinner at Sophia's house.
Yes, the quiet, contemplative guy who explicitly told her he does not celebrate Christmas is suddenly thrust right into the middle of the most chaotic, traditional British family dinner ever.
He is sitting there pulling paper crackers, reading the terrible jokes inside, and wearing a flimsy, brightly colored paper crown on his head amidst screaming children.
It is the absolute perfect blending of his search for gentle grace and her family's loud, messy, unavoidable reality. He embraces her chaos.
The author then wraps the narrative with a lovely, subtle touch of magical realism. While playing in the shop, the children accidentally knock over and spill the little glass vial of the love potion that Brona the witch had gifted to Carmen.
Instead of panicking or telling an adult, the kids work together to quickly clean it up and pinky swear to keep it a secret between them.
It's such a perfect ending note. It leaves you with this lingering, warm feeling that maybe, just maybe, a little bit of actual magic is real if you are open to looking for it in the right places and sharing it with the right people.
It's lovely.
So if we look back at the journey of these characters from page 1, Carmen finds her competence, her managerial skills, and her self-worth. She proves to her family, and more importantly to herself, that she isn't just a failure hiding under a duvet.
Sophia learns to let go of her obsessive, crushing need for control and accept help. And Mr. McCready literally rejoins the world of the living.
When you reflect on all of this, what stands out to you the most about the mechanics of how the shop was actually saved?
Well, what I find so deeply satisfying is that the shop wasn't saved by a sterile corporate buyout.
Right.
It wasn't saved by some magical, benevolent billionaire swooping in to write a blank check. It was saved by blood, sweat, and leveraging the unique, irreplaceable human charm of a physical community space.
Carmen created an environment that made people feel something. You absolutely cannot buy that curated, dusty, magical feeling of discovery on Amazon. You can buy a mug, but you can't buy the experience of watching a toy train with your neighbors while it snows outside.
It functions as a passionate defense of the physical world in an increasingly digital, frictionless one.
Absolutely.
The true value of the shop didn't lie merely in the texts it held. The value was in the human connection it facilitated, the tactile sensation of holding a beautiful tissue-covered book, and the shared, chaotic experience of a community party.
It argues that friction, the act of traveling to a store, talking to an eccentric owner, searching for a book, is a feature of a good life, not a bug to be optimized away.
That's beautifully said.
Okay, as we wrap up this deep dive, I want to leave you, our listener, with a final thought to mull over, drawing on everything we've unpacked today.
We've spent a lot of time analyzing the stark contrast between Mrs. Marsh's clean, clear, curated retail philosophy, which is essentially the philosophy of Sophia and Blair Fenning's entire lives, and the dusty, hidden, messy treasures of Mr. McCready's antiquarian shop.
Look at how you operate in your own day-to-day life. Are you spending all your energy trying to maintain a clean, clear, curated storefront for the outside world?
Are you filing down your own teeth, hiding your actual self, just to make sure the window display looks perfect for people walking by?
Or are you willing to let people into the back room? Are you willing to embrace the messy, authentic, slightly chaotic reality of who you actually are, dead flies and all?
Because as Carmen learned the hard way, the curated storefront might bring people in, but the messy, uncurated reality is where the actual magic happens.
Thank you so much for joining us for this deep dive.
It has been an absolute pleasure exploring the depths of this story with you.
Until next time, keep reading, keep exploring, and maybe, just maybe, leave the tissue paper on the books.
Long-time listener, first-time writer. I'm a woman in my early 20s working my way through college and trying to come out the other side with as little debt as possible. I've never had a reason to write in before, but seriously, something majorly effed up happened last month, and I thought, right, I'm sending this into Let's Read. One of my side hustles is working as a Deliveroo driver when I have spare time between jobs or after the gym. Gotta keep the side income flowing, you know? This one evening, I got an order through the app from a burger chain and accepted it because I was nearby. I didn't recognize the address, which was odd because I know this town pretty well, but whatever. I took the order, waited longer than usual for the teen workers to sort it out, and then set off. It turned out to be right at the edge of the delivery zone, so by the time I arrived, the food was probably going to be lukewarm at best. Still, not my problem. Customers know the ETA, and there's always a microwave. The farther I drove from the restaurant, the seedier the neighborhoods became. We started in a tired urban patch and then went into a suburb that looked like someone had stopped caring decades ago. Houses were boarded up and dark. The place felt abandoned. It even had that weird lack of graffiti, like even people who caused trouble wouldn't touch it. I remember hearing fear described as bone prickles on a podcast recently, and that phrase kept popping into my head. Driving there with the smell of fries and burgers making me a little queasy, I felt those bone prickles strong as anything. It's that whole body tingling when something is just off. When I pulled up, the house was at the edge of that rundown stretch. If it had been the only lived-in property on the road, I wouldn't have been surprised. Yet here it was, light pouring from every window and upbeat indie music, loud enough to hear on the street. I hauled the insulated bag, which felt heavier than it should, and knocked. It took a few knocks before the music cut and someone opened the door. The guy who answered looked about my age, wearing a band tee and doing this goofy smile that made me think he might be stoned. I explained I had the delivery, and he called back inside to check if anyone had ordered. He seemed baffled. There were only 3 people there, and they'd had pizza earlier, he said. I showed him the app, confirmed the address, and he asked me to wait on the porch while he checked with the others. I heard muffled voices, some shouting, and the bone prickles returned. He eventually came back and apologized, saying the others had indeed ordered the burgers along with the pizza and all was fine. Just as I started to unzip the bag, he insisted on giving me a cash tip. I said the app would do fine, but he was adamant. Could he give me £7? I shrugged and said, okay, who even keeps cash on them these days? This time he left the door cracked open, just enough for me to peek inside. The living room looked surprisingly nice. Framed posters, a couple of arcade machines in the corner, and a big TV. He paced between the door and a kitchen, then called something down a set of stairs to a basement. I figured maybe they'd turned the cellar into a home cinema. When he came back with £7 and 25 pence in change, I laughed at the odd amount. I finally pulled the bags out, and unsurprisingly, they were cold. He'd kept me on the porch long enough. After quick thanks and a couple of awkward goodbyes, I got back in the car and checked for more jobs. Another order had just come through from the same restaurant, so I decided to swing back. I rely on my reversing camera a bit too much and had it set so my rear view showed the back seat. Glancing up, I saw someone lying on the floor behind the passenger seat. He looked like a guy in his mid-20s, clutching some odd, long-bladed kitchen tool, more of a boning knife than anything I'd seen, and staring like he was waiting for a cue. Panic slammed into me. The customers had kept me on the porch long enough for someone to slip in. I hadn't locked the car because I only expected to be a minute. Immediate regret. My heart nearly exploded. I pictured the obvious worst. I told myself not to look back so he wouldn't know I'd seen him. Then, seeing the lights of a petrol station ahead, I kept my speed steady, turned in at the last second, screeched into the forecourt, jumped out, and ran inside. I must have sounded bonkers, shouting about how a guy with a weird kitchen knife was in my back seat and I'd been distracted at the door. The attendant looked at me like I was deranged, asking me to explain. He froze when I checked the lot. My car door was open, and a ridiculously tall man was unfolding himself from my back seat and sprinting into the nearby trees. He didn't look aggressive. Honestly, he looked petrified. I called the police. They came quickly, searched, and found the knife nearby. A kind of filleted knife used for fish, but clean. When they went to the house to ask questions, the occupants were just as puzzled as I was. Everyone inside accounted for, none of them fitting the description. No motive, no sign anyone had slipped out. I never found out who the guy was or what he'd planned. I didn't quit driving, but I started locking the car every time I left it, even for a second, and I checked the back seat every time. Whatever that man was running from, or for, I hope I never meet it. The way he looked as he fled made me think someone worse might have been nearby. It's one of those creepy mysteries I'm glad ended without anyone hurt. I'm from England and won't say exactly where, so as not to dox myself or risk my job. I'm a post woman, a proper postie, and I love the work. I run a rural round I've had for years thanks to a bit of begging and a friendly relationship with the head postmaster. Normally, routes rotate a lot, so this is a rare perk. I know most of the people on my beat. Stu, the mature student who loves marine biology, Mrs. Ridley, who treats every minor sniffle like a medical saga, the Four Bottoms, a glam rock loving, plant obsessed polycule, and twins Joe and Gemma, who are spoiled but grateful. One person I never got close to was a chap called Farmer Doyle. Calling it a farm would be generous. A few sheep, goats, a pig, and some scruffy hens, but it was filthy even by rural standards. He sold milk and eggs locally. I always thought Sainsbury's had better produce, to be honest. Then, for the first time in about 6 years of doing my round, I had a scheduled collection from Doyle. You can book Royal Mail to pick up parcels, and he had arranged a free collection with strict instructions not to knock. Apparently, he'd left the parcel in an outhouse and uploaded a photo to prove where. Fair enough. I wore my wellies that day because the yard was a sludge pit. The mud up to my ankles confirmed the choice. I opened the outhouse and was hit by a stench that nearly made me retch. Still, the marked box was front and center, so I grabbed it and headed back to the van. Halfway there, I realized the parcel was leaking. A foul, oily fluid sloshing from the bottom. There was no way I could accept it for collection, but I couldn't just abandon it either, so I broke the do not disturb instruction and went to find Doyle. My heart sank as the parcel collapsed in my arms and the base fell out, spilling a mess all over my legs and coat. I've smelled bad things in my time. Before the post, I worked as a nursing assistant and encountered some truly awful odors. This was worse. It was a heap of rotting tissue, liquefying offal, and it covered me from knees to stomach. I dropped the rubbish and heaved, which didn't help. Furious, I thought of the rules. You can't send animal carcasses or hazardous biological material through the post. As I stood there, sick and furious, I noticed details that made my stomach flip. What might have been vertebrae, and a pale, glossy eye that looked fresher than the rest. My mind jumped to horrible possibilities. Was Doyle trying to ship something illicit, hide evidence, or worse? I felt exposed on that little holding, picturing Doyle behind a curtain with a gun. So I ran to the farmhouse. The door opened before I reached it, and a younger man, Doyle's grandson, as it turned out, stood there. He wasn't Doyle. He looked horrified at the sight of me covered in gore. He explained that his grandfather had been taken into care the day before after a decline in his mental state and erratic behavior. The family hadn't realized he'd been packing things up. He apologized and helped me hose off the worst of it out back before I got back to the van. The thing that haunts me was what I glimpsed in the dilapidated barn as I trudged away. I only looked for a second, then turned away, but no amount of showers could scrub that image. Piles of carcasses, animals indistinguishable from one another, heaped together into a sodden, rotting mound. Empty cardboard boxes were stacked nearby. I didn't check the labels, and I regret it. I don't know where the parcels were meant to go. Was he shipping rotten meat as farm produce? Or something more sinister? Maybe dementia or some other illness had warped his understanding. The small holding was taken down soon after, which, given what I saw, I didn't mourn. The experience changed me. I now double-check collections. and never ever carry an unchecked parcel to the van. Some things you can't unsee. Now, a confession, I was an absolute arse in college, the kind of smug, annoying prankster who thought everything was hilarious. I'm glad this was about 15 years ago because later I'd probably have ended up as one of those insufferable YouTube prank people. In those days, I hung around with a fraternity who encouraged me to pledge.
I love the attention, the hazing, being the center of it. Total cringe in hindsight. Back then, Amazon deliveries were a different mess. Packages were often left on doorsteps, and people nicked them with little consequence. I must have swiped a dozen parcels: vitamins, a dog bowl, a novelty toy, the occasional mildly interesting thing. Then one day, I saw a large box on a step that screamed, "Good haul." My idiot mate filmed me sneaking up. I grabbed it, pulled back, and it detonated. Not a glitter bomb, a real trap. It burned my face and set my hoodie alight. I was left screaming. My cameraman ran. Then a gang of masked men jumped me from the bushes. They beat me up, yelling that I was a thief and the scourge of the neighborhood. I ended up with a broken socket, a permanent limp, and a shattered arm that needed a rod. Maybe I deserved to be taught a lesson for stealing, but the severity still sticks with me. Months later, I watched the house from my car and saw a young family living there, not the type to have organized that attack. To this day, I don't know whether I was targeted by people linked to the original owners or by vigilantes who decided to make an example of thieves. Either way, I changed my ways, gave up the wild antics, and stuck to a quieter life. I'm grateful for that.